It's a parade inside my city, yeah!
Now, most of you are watching and wondering what type of show this is, so I think it's best that we start each episode describing the aim and the objective of the show. Now, this show's objective is to analyze male and female nature regarding intersexual dynamics and to enlighten young men to the dangers of female-oriented thinking. Now, on this channel, we're going to achieve this goal by breaking down, analyzing, and exposing lies and mistruths concerning how men and women interact that's being fed to young Western males and females through popular media. And this medium includes movies, television shows, social media, and even commercials and advertisements. Now, this channel was created to help educate young males about female nature, your role as a man in society, and to illuminate the burden of performance that most men will endure throughout their lives. Now, if you've seen the thumbnail for the video, if we're just a reaction channel, I say we're not like most reaction channels. We get into the deep dives here on this channel. Now, I debated with myself for months exactly how to start our first episode and exactly what I wanted to convey with the very first show. Now, I want to open the show discussing propaganda, but this is not a propaganda show. Now, for this episode, we're going to take a look at propaganda, what it is, what would be classified as propaganda, its history, and how it shapes our lives today in the West. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. I mean, look at me. I'm a grown man. I'm wearing a mask that has been painted on. Got teardrops on my eyes. I got teardrops under my eyes. Like the video. Alright, so let's continue. Now, before we get into our discussion about current propaganda, we first need to define the objective of propaganda. Propaganda is used to promote a particular viewpoint or agenda. If we were to use that metric, currently in the West, there's mass propaganda, taking place every day. So we want to narrow that definition a little bit. So propaganda could be defined as information, ideas, opinions, or images, often only giving one part of an argument that is broadcast, published, or in some other way spread with the intention of influencing people's behavior. And many scholars, journalists, and politicians have long argued about how to properly define propaganda and distinguish it from other forms of mass communication. So more appropriately, propaganda is biased information designed to shape public opinion and behavior. It's often understood that propaganda involves any medium that stirs an irrational, emotional reaction to the viewer's thoughts or views. Now, this type of biased communication is typically expressed through forms of art that may not always illustrate one set of thoughts in a transparent way. Now, propaganda historically could be traced back to the Greeks, and we're going to use an example of a Greek commander and a later example of propaganda. So as city-states, the Greek citizen class were well aware of their shared group interests. Moreover, the Greeks were kept updated on the affairs and the struggles of their city-states. So on religious and political matters, their disagreements would often give rise to propaganda and counter-propaganda. Now, although propaganda wasn't used by the Greeks in the way that we are accustomed to today with the digital media we consume, the arts were a primary medium for the Greeks to project their thoughts onto the groups. So making efficient use of drama and oratory, the Greeks were effective at teaching political, social, and moral ideas. And with the use of theater, games, assemblies, and religious festivals, Greeks were able to influence large groups of their citizens and countrymen to their ways. And therefore, since the age of the Greeks, any society which had common knowledge and an awareness of similar interests participated or made use in propaganda. And just a few notable historical examples: Greek commander Themistocles in 480 BCE used disinformation to get Xerxes into a naval battle at the Straits of Salamis. Now, the straits were so narrow that it allowed the much smaller Greek fleet to outmaneuver the much larger Persian fleet. And this allowed the Greeks to defeat Xerxes' armada, right? And Pope Urban II used religious propaganda to stir up support for the Crusades. So with that said, many of our historical, military, and political leaders have used propaganda. Just a few of those examples would be Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and even Napoleon. And from the Napoleonic Wars to the Second World War, propaganda was used quite effectively. In addition, with increases in technological advancements during the 20th century, such as radio, print, television, and even social media, propaganda has become much more polished, efficient, and more accessible to the masses. So with the close of World War II, the increasing use of technology and the strategies for dispersing propaganda have uniquely changed. With television and internet increasing the rate of speed and the reach of information in a global economy, consumers must now critically analyze information to make better informed financial decisions. In addition, becoming a better informed individual capable of making sound, logical decisions. In our modern times, with a perfected machine capable of mass communication while extending the reach and influence of information and ideas, is a propagandist's greatest tool for pushing their appeal to the masses. Propaganda we consume today employs tactics used in advertising, communication, public relations, and more. That is a big part of what makes propaganda and what kind of distinguishes it from other forms of mass communication, right? And that is the goal to simplify complex issues for fashionable consumption, and generally buys that Ted is willing to hang out less. So to simplify a complex issue like abortion and make it fashionable consumption and aim toward a specific end goal, right? What we would do is we would say her body, her choice. So that's propaganda, which is great for fashionable consumption by the masses, right? That is generally biased towards a specific end goal, which is to not want to involve yourself in the choice that somebody else makes with their body, when in actuality it's much more complex than just her body, her choice. Because I would argue there's many laws restricting or making requirements, if you will, of our bodies. Like I said, this isn't a show about propaganda. We're more concentrated propaganda that is being pushed in popular media towards young males and females about men and women and how we really interact with each other. That's very damaging to young males, less so to females. Females don't have the same experience that males have, right? So it's going to affect one more than the other, and it affects men, and that is the point of our show. With all that being said, propaganda itself isn't inherently nefarious or harmful. Propaganda can be used to shape public opinion and even behavior, thereby achieving a much needed social good. So we're not saying that all propaganda is of equal standing. Obviously, some propaganda helps achieve a commonly acquired goal. And I know some may refer to this channel as propaganda, but the only objective of our channel is to highlight the negative aspects of modern propaganda relating to the two sexes, especially young males, and the false narrative pushed by modern media concerning how men and women interact in the modern dating market. One of them later, for example, most of Barney's girlfriends are so-called bimbos, and most of the characters make fun of them because they don't respect themselves. Information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or viewpoint. So it's very similar to what we described in our initial monologue, right? So again, information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or viewpoint. So again, you think about the Got Milk right? That was misleading. Also, only you can prevent forest fires. All right, we're going to take a look at some examples of famous propaganda. This is from Canva, 50 powerful examples of visual propaganda and the meanings behind them. So let's do a little bit of a mini dive into the historical example. All right, so the first one we're going to start with is if you're an American, probably one of the most recognizable visual representations of propaganda. That is the I Want You poster. So on the poster, you got a picture of what is depicted as Uncle Sam. He's pointing out towards the viewer of the poster saying, I want you for U.S. Army. So we're going to read below it a little bit. So now, what's now regarded as the most famous poster in the world, the I Want You poster first appeared on the cover of Leslie's Weekly on July 6, 1916, as the United States was entering World War I, with the title, What Are You Doing for Preparedness? The poster shows Uncle Sam pointing directly at the viewer, compelling them to action. So again, there's that action. That's referred to it as. There's that specific end goal that it wants, right? Because propaganda is typically aiming towards a specific end goal. What I like to call it is a call to action almost. And that call to action is for you to sign up for the U.S. Army. To them, the propagandists viewpoint or end goal would be to get you, the viewer, to sign up to be a part of the U.S. Army. So again, I call it a call to action, but let's continue. Well, this one here is a picture of a man sitting with a little girl on his lap while she's reading a book, and little boy down there playing with toy soldiers, it looks like. And the caption beneath it says, Daddy, what did you do in the Great War? So again, this poster was created by British illustrator Savile Lumley and was used in World War I to compel men with families to enlist. The aim of the poster was to strike at their pride, persuading them that in the future their children would judge them not for their decision to support their family back home, but for their wartime contribution. So again, what's the specific end goal that the propagandist wants? They want you, that call to action, to sign up for the, World War I. And the reason being, and this was for men with families. So this was specific to men with families. And that was the reason being is to, like they said, to strike at their pride so that in the future when their children ask them what they did and during that time, they won't feel bad if they have fought in the war, right? But it's biased because they could possibly die in that war. So I think in the case of would a child, their dad fight in a war that was for a good cause and die, or would they rather their dad not fight in that war but live with them? I think most kids are going to pick the latter. The specific end goals to get you to join the wars, the men with the families, but it's biased. It tells the whole truth, right? There's a possibility that you could die in war. Now, this is another one I'm going to really go over. You can kind of see, got Hitler sitting on the wires. This one's pretty self-explanatory. You never know who's on the wires. Be careful what you say. Basically, they wanted to send a clear message to the civilians of the Allied powers that Hitler's Germany had means of listening into their communications. So that one's kind of self-explanatory. Now, here we go. This one's pretty famous. However, it's typically not who you think it is. Most think that this is Rosie the Riveter. It's actually not. So this will be another incredibly popular poster worldwide. It was created by J. Howard Miller in 1943. Originally, it was created for Westinghouse Electric and strictly internally to boost the morale of women who already worked at the company, rather than to recruit women to come to work. So they're basically saying the poster was for the women that were already in the workforce at that company, not as a means to promote females to entice them to come work at the company that didn't even work. So the poster was rediscovered in the early 80s and used to promote feminism and is often mistaken for Rosie the Riveter. So, the feminists again use this, and they use this as a part of their, I think this would have been second wave feminism, right? And they use this as a means of getting women into the workforce. So that's why that says that it was rather than to recruit women to come to work, it was used internally to boost the morale of women working at the company. The feminists use this to promote women out of their households and into the workforce. So again, the specific end goal, even like for the original specific end goal was, as they say, to boost the morale of women. Now, I don't think that it was propaganda then, but when you take the feminists and they take this poster and then they pervert it, right, to basically say that, women can basically do what men can do. The second wave essentially wanted to break down the barriers between men and women and put them on equal playing field, and I just disagree. The poster was rediscovered in the early 80s and used to promote feminism. So the feminists used it, even though they knew it was used probably for females, a company that they already work for. They used it to coax females outside of their homes into the workforce. And that is the propagandist endpoint, was to get women out of the household. There's that call to action. So as far as the three waves of feminism, right? So you have first, second, third wave. We're currently in third wave feminism. Second wave happened, I think, 60s, 70s, around the sexual revolution. And then first wave feminism happened at the beginning of the 20th century, 1900s to 1920s. I have like a nuanced take on it. Like, I agree with the first wave of feminism, of course. I believe that women have the right to vote, even though at the same time, black people were, who had supposedly have been free for at least 50 plus years, still hadn't had the right to, like, they couldn't vote, especially in the South. So I agree with first wave feminism. Women should be able to serve in society in the same kind of capacity that it could. Well, not the same, but in a similar capacity that they can contribute to society. So I agree with first wave feminism. Yes, women should have the right to vote, just like black people should have the right to vote, even though we got it 40 to 50 years after, through the Civil Rights Act. Second wave feminism, that feminism basically wanted to break down the barriers between men and women. So sex and work, right? So they wanted women to be able to enter into the workforce and not have to worry about being married and giving birth and the things that are typically only exclusive to women. So wave feminism I disagree with because I agree to give them that, but I agree with the end goal, which is they're not going to achieve what they want, because men and women are different. So as a woman, you can put off creating a family just like a man for years while you build your career, but you're going to get punished for it on the back end. And if feminism in the feminists during this time could see, I'm watching the show right now on Hulu, but if feminists could now see what's going on, I think they might rethink some of the positions that they have, because they were basically telling women, like, even though I haven't gotten a family, I don't want a family, and I'm choosing to focus on my career, the only reason I'm not happy is because, we need the equal rights. Men and women need to be viewed as the same. And so that they would go through their, right? And they would be like, well, I'm only having these issues because men and women aren't the same. If I was a man, I wouldn't have these issues, right? So they try to put women, second wave feminism tries to put women on the same equal playing field as men. And 30, 40 years later, maybe 50 years later, right? modern women have the same issues and problems that they did. A lot of those feminists did. Why is that? Because you cannot change the outcome just because you want to make us equal. It will never work when it comes to sexuality. So that's why I disagree with second wave feminism, because it has to do with sexuality in the workforce. There's only one sex that can get married without a job, and it's women. So even if you work like a man and do all these things, you're not going to have the same as a man, because you don't have the same lived experience. You have a similar lived experience, but it is not the same. So I agree with, but hey, I feel like, hey, if that's what y'all want, y'all can have it, but you're not going to be happy. And I think that proof is here today. You can see it. Just go online. And third wave feminism, of course, that's the Looney Tune feminism. That's what I call it, Looney Tune feminism, which is men can be women and women can be men, and trans men are women and trans women are men, and all these in the LGBTQIA divided by 3 minus 2. That's my breakdown of 3 waves of feminism. First wave, I agree with wholeheartedly. Second wave, I agree with on principle. But on practicality, I disagree. I don't think it's going to work out the way that they think it was, and we see that proof today. And then third wave feminism is, of course, wrong. All right, so let's get on to the next one. So here we have the actual Rosie the Riveter. Underneath, let's see, Rosie the Riveter was created in 1943 by Norman Rockwell and actually represents the American women that worked in the munitions and war supplies factory in World War II. It served as a call to arms for women to become strong and capable in order to support the war effort. See, they actually say it themselves, a call to arms, a call to action. So they wanted women to become strong and capable to support the war effort. So basically, we need you to work like men, almost as efficient as men, even though we know you're not as efficient as men. And they actually maybe wanted to make the women believe that, but you gotta understand that in munitions and war supplies, that would be like working, like a hard labor job. Women are just not capable at the same efficiency as a man. The call to action was for women to make themselves strong and capable. And like I said, again, propaganda isn't inherently nefarious or harmful. In this case, I would say that it was a much needed good, because a lot of the men were going to fight in World War II. Alright, so this one here is a poster against child labor. Shows small children working hard while a large and portly man looks on with bags of money at his feet. It depicts him as stealing their innocence and childhood due to the incredibly dangerous nature of the jobs they were forced to work to help feed themselves and their families while being paid incredibly small sums. And on the poster, it says, "Thief, the worst thief is he who steals the playtime of children." So if I had to guess, this poster is probably somewhere around the time of the child labor laws, probably late 19th century, mid 19th century, I can't remember. And that was, back then, there were no laws against working. And so they are trying to show, and this, like I said, this is what I believe is for a good. It's something that was for society to grow. And you see, children working here while this man is making money off the children. They don't get to live as children. It draws a lot of emotions from you on this poster to see, this man stealing the lives of these young children, essentially. And so I wouldn't doubt if this is also a poster or a part of propaganda that helped institute those child labor laws. So let's go to this next one. This is the anti-smoking. I like this. I do this. So this one, if you're old enough to remember the old Atari game, this is what it's modeled after, the old Pong, I believe. So it says a powerful anti-smoking statement. This poster borrows from the classic Atari game Pong. The cigarette acts as one of the paddles and keeps ticking away at the lungs one piece at a time. The viewer knows that if the game were to continue, the lungs would be destroyed completely, which ultimately symbolizes a game over or a death. So they're basically saying, as you smoke, every time you smoke, you're ticking away at your lungs. You're going to see a lot of these war ones, so I'm going to pick out specific war propaganda posters. This is one that is also a very, very familiar one. It's if you've ever seen Miracle at St. Anna, there is actually a part in the movie where you can actually see poster. It's a little tattered, but it looks like you have American kids playing. A Nazi symbol is above them, so it says, "Don't let that shadow touch them," by War Bonds. So encouraging people to buy War Bonds was an incredibly popular propaganda message. And an example can be seen here. It shows 3 children underneath the shadow of a Nazi symbol, along with the message, "Don't let that shadow touch them," by War Bonds. This message implies that if you don't support the war financially, harm could come to your children, people, or playing on people's fear. It was incredibly successful. So yes, the call to action is obviously to get you to buy war bonds, and that benefits the nation that's waging that war, because that means when you buy war bonds that you can spend that money in ammunition, clothing, food. So here we got perks of joining the submarine service. So it looks like a submariner, I think I said that right, has a lady on his arm. She's wrapped around him, adjusting his medals. It says he volunteered for submarine service. So this is a nice one too. So it says, "Playing on the desires of men." This poster alludes to the idea that joining the service will attract women. It promoted the idea that serving was fun and full of rewards, and chose not to show any negativity or harsh imagery to scare people into joining. Again, that's kind of self-explanatory. You don't see the other side of joining the submarine service. They only choose to show you the side that they know that men want. So again, this one's another one. Someone told, I think this was World War II, his warship had been sunk, which kind of plays into the previous one. This is the side of propaganda for joining the submarine service. This is for people that are not joining the submarine service, telling them, basically don't talk, because you're putting those ones that are in the submarine service at risk. So it says on this one, the war is over. For 55,000 GIs and 1 million Vietnamese, it's all over. Use your vote for our troops home now. Vote yes for peace on April 6th. So this is the anti-war poster, and it shows the death tolls for both American and Vietnamese soldiers during the Vietnam War. It says that the war is over for them because they're dead, but can be over for everyone if they vote for peace. Again, this propaganda is showing, a biased side, which is, well, the war is over for these individuals, so we might as well just vote for peace. Well, then that also means that those that have died for nothing. They died in vain. There was nothing to be gained. So again, this is propaganda because it's showing a particularly one-sided argument, and the call to action is, of course, for everyone to vote for peace. This is a Nazi, and I actually like this one. It says, "This Nazi propaganda poster depicts the people of the United States as domineering and portraying a number of negative characteristics of American citizens. They show them as money-grubbing and racist, and encouraging the German people to look at Americans in a negative way." So again, even though I agree, America at the time also wasn't that much better, especially if you were African American or black. So I agree with the Germans on that take that yes, they're not showing their best ideals, I'll put it that way. But it's a one-sided argument because there is a lot to be cherished about America and Americans. The call to action is to get the German people to look at the Americans in a negative way. The Nazis were very, very, very good at coming up with propaganda. Their minister of propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, had a few successful, when I say successful, I mean that they achieved their goal. Not successful as in it was a good thing, but a lot of programs that he had came up with were successful in that they were able to achieve the end goal. of what he wanted them to do. Another Nazi propaganda poster. So I like this one as well, especially during the Second World War, because there was a lot of espionage going on. So in the poster, you got Talk Less. On one side, you got a Nazi high-ranking officer, official, and on the other side, looks like you got a common British civilian. So in this propaganda poster, again, from the era of the Second World War, warns of the risk of German spies infiltrating the civilian communities of the Allied powers. This message was spread consistently during the war and for some time after the war. So obviously, the end goal is to get people to talk less. So that's kind of self-explanatory. Again, another war one, World War I. This is aiming at men's pride as well. The earlier one we looked at. So we're just gonna kind of scroll through the rest of these, and I'm gonna go over a couple that I like. We're gonna go ahead and wrap this section on up. This is the cover of a propaganda comic book. It shows what tomorrow could look like. Tomorrow could look like for Americans if the United States became a communist country, and it showed the flag in flames and innocent citizens being used by communists. And the reason why this is, again, a one-sided argument, because there are some benefits to socialist programs. We have them in the United States. And in this day and age, we actually understand that neither socialism or pure capitalism is right on their own. You need some form of both. So in this country, the fire, police, water, electricity, a lot of that is controlled by the state, by the government, because we understand that we can't privatize everything. So that's another good poster. Again, the end goal is to get Americans to view communism in a negative light, to not want to join the commune. And this one is one for the Communist Party. Just a few, it's obviously showing join the Communist Party, this way to progress, and it's all shown to the right of the poster, implying that you're going the right way. Again, this one's a good one. The plight for women to claim the right to vote came to a head in the United States in 1920 when the right was officially granted. This was a women's suffrage flyer circulated that year, spreading the message that the right had been claimed and should be exercised. So again, this is getting women to register to vote. That's the end goal. Get them to register to vote even though they may not understand exactly what they're voting for at that time, because remember, a lot of women also didn't want the right to vote during that time. A good majority didn't, because it required bucket duty and certain things that women just did not want to be necessarily a part of. Another good one about World War I, because in the First World War, America did not want to get caught up in a Eurocentric war. So this is one that's obviously aiming at the pride of Americans, and the call of action is to get them to join the war effort. That's every woman, man, and child. Another good poster for the London Parliamentary Recruiting Committee, 1915, it depicted a line of battle-ready soldiers with a space reserved for a fit man. The imagery and language used in the poster compelled men of action to join their comrades in the fight. This one's on death and fascism. The poster reads, "The world now knows that the fascists have nothing to offer the youth but death." It shows a skeleton removing a mask, which is the face of Hitler, and alludes to the fall of the Nazi regime. Another good propaganda poster. Another good one against the Nazis, commissioned by one of the Allied countries in 1943, played on the emotions of its target audience, parents. The innocent-looking child with the war scenes in the background is struggling under the weight and the size of the Nazi cap, and the skull badge pinned over his heart acted to reinforce the sense of fear. Very good one. Yep, again, this was one to get men to join the Navy instead of like the Uncle Sam. It's a woman, she's attractive, and it says she wants you for the Navy. Plays on men's desires for women to get them to enlist. So there's that end goal, which is to get them to enlist. Yep, so this one's using Uncle Sam to make sure that FDR can get his fourth term. The idea of "I want you" was used in many propaganda posters. This one included was used to FDR's advantage and helped him secure his fourth term as president. It showed Uncle Sam pointing to FDR and telling him he wants him to finish the job, that America needs him to finish the job. This would have been during the Second World War, and of course FDR did get elected for his fourth term, did not complete it. He died, I think, a couple years into his fourth term. Harry Truman finished out. And Harry Truman is the one that decided to drop the 2 bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So that's it on the propaganda. So as you can see, these examples of propaganda. So essentially, if the information is biased and it has a call to action, then we typically view that as propaganda. So the point of this whole monologue was to get the viewer, you, to understand how complex the idea of propaganda is before we get into our discussion. Because essentially, that's what we do on this show. We attack the propaganda of the feminist, or, the feminist view of how men and women should interact. We break down how and why we act the way we do, and we show that truth through data and statistics, and we back that up by actually breaking down and analyzing movies and television shows. So again, if you are into this type of content, you like this type of content, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, help us grow so that we can produce more content like this in the future. And let's go ahead and get into our next section. All right, we're gonna go ahead and transition into our next section of the video. And we're gonna be discussing the show, How I Met Your Mother. Like I said, if you've seen the thumbnail for the video, we're gonna be talking about the first 2 episodes of How I Met Your Mother. The first episode, we're going to be discussing men and marriage. And for the second episode, we're gonna actually be going over women and their arousal. What arouses women? Let's go ahead and get into the show's breakdown. This is How I Met Your Mother. It's an American sitcom created by Craig Thomas and Carter Bays for CBS. The series aired from September 19th, 2005 to March 31st, 2014. And it follows the main character Ted Mosby and his group of friends in New York City's Manhattan. As a framing device, Ted in 2030 recounts to his son, Luke, and daughter Penny the events from September 2005 to May 2013 that led him to meet their mother. It looks like it was produced by 20th Century Fox Television, 20th Television, now Disney ABC, domestic television. So it says the series was loosely inspired by Thomas and Bay's friendship when they both lived in New York. So the vast majority of episodes directed by Pamela Fryman. She directed 196 out of 208 episodes. I think that is very important that a female directed, I would say, about 90+% of the episodes. Keep that in mind. The other directors, he did it for 7 episodes, Michael Shea, 4 episodes, and Neil Patrick Harris, 1 episode. So let's go ahead and get into the premise. The series follows the adventures of Ted Mosby, played by Josh Radnor, and his life as a single man. His stories are narrated by Bob Saget, rest in peace, as Ted Mosby 25 years later, as he tells them to his adolescent children. So we're not I don't want to read verbatim all of this. You can kind of see it on the screen. I will read this part. So the show's framed story depicts Ted, the voice of Bob Saget, again, rest in peace, uncredited, verbally retelling the story to his son Luke and daughter Penny, as they sit on the couch in 2030. This future set frame is officially the show's present day, and How I Met Your Mother exploits this framing device in numerous ways to depict and redepict events from multiple points of view, to set up jokes using quick and sometimes multiple flashbacks nested within the oral retelling. to substitute visual, verbal, or oral euphemisms for activities Ted does not want to talk about with his children. For example, sexual practices, use of illicit substance, and vulgar language. So basically, and I think that's important because what they're basically showing you here is that the story is told from 2030. That's the present day. It's a story set in the future. So even now, that's 7 years from us. But when this show came out, that was like 20 something years away. And so essentially, they say that they used the present day as a way to exploit retelling the stories, essentially. Telling the same story in different viewpoints. A very good mechanism that they use in the storytelling of How I Met Your Mother is when they use euphemisms for illicit activities that Ted doesn't want his kids to know about. So it's like playing ping pong. And you might actually see the characters in 2005 playing ping pong, but you knowing as a viewer that they're actually having sex. So it's actually, I like that about How I Met Your Mother. Let's take a look at the cast, right? Now, Josh Radnor is Ted Mosby. About half of the cast were well known before the show, and the other half less so. So Josh Radnor is less known. I remember him, if you ever seen the spoof on the movie, it's called Not Another Teen Movie, but it's basically a spoof on all those 90 teen movies like She's All That, City Blues. So Josh Radnor, he plays in that. He also plays in the show Nazi Hunters on Amazon Prime. So very good show. Gotta go check that out as well. If you are into World War II, we're gonna go to the ones that we don't know. So Kobe Smulders, she plays Robin Scherbatsky. I didn't really see her in much of anything. I think she was a virtual unknown. I think she's now married to Taran Killam. He used to be one of the cast members on SNL, funny guy as well. And we're gonna go to the mother, who is Christine Miloshi. I don't know how to pronounce that. If you ever seen The Wolf of Wall Street, she plays in that. But again, at the time of this show in 2005, she was a virtual nobody. What we're going to do now is go over the three characters who are well known. We're going to we'll start with Allison Hannigan. She's probably the most known out of these three. She played in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Sarah Michelle Gellar. Yeah, she played Willow. She also played in the American Pie series. She's probably played in a few other things as well, but she was very well known when the show came out. Neil Patrick Harris as well. He is pretty well known if you're grew up in the 80s essentially, because Neil Patrick Harris, he played Doogie Howser, and that was a big in the 80s. He played in some other things, but that's what he's mostly known for. And then we have Jason Segel as Marshall Erickson. And Jason Segel, he played in Freaks and Geeks. He's played in a few things. Forgetting Sarah Marshall, I Love You Man. He's played in a lot of things since. In 2005, he had really only Freaks and Geeks and maybe like the 40-Year-Old Virgin. Not as well known, I would say, as Allison Hannigan. She was, like I said, she's been playing, she's been pretty well known since the 90s. Early 90s at that. So as you can see that this show 9 seasons. So if you want to see a full breakdown, see me eventually break down the whole series, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. I do want to, yes, I am. I'm going to spend a little bit of time here. How I Met Your Father. So this is obviously coming out. So it looks like they tried to do it in 2013, and it didn't look like it was able to take off. And so if you've been watching Hulu, they have came out with a show, How I Met Your Father. Complete trash. Got Hilary Duff playing the lead character. And there's a few reasons why the show How I Met Your Father is not going to do well. And I don't want to go into detail on every last one, but I will say this, that no one is as interested to see of what a woman goes through to meet a father. It's not hard for a woman to get a man if she's able to put in the work. If she's able and willing to know her role, right, in the relationship. But man, we like to see that struggle. That's why we don't really care to see female leads, especially when it comes to adversity and overcoming. The struggle of a woman is nowhere near the struggle of a man. Yeah, that's basically it on that. So you kind of get the premise of the show. Basically, loosely based off the creators of the show and their time in New York, their friendship and how they lived in New York. I will say that you have to remember this show, it came out in 2005. Now 2005 is a unique year. It is, if I'm not mistaken, the BlackBerry, the Razr, all those what we consider now what we would consider the first generation, the screen phones, right? Because before then, phones were pretty primitive. You know, we had flip phones. You didn't have the touch screen. That's what I was meant to say. So 2005 is the beginning of, I would say, really 2006. These are the beginnings of the first generation of touchscreen phones. So no real apps and social media yet. This show was produced before even the dawn of social media exploded. Some of this stuff is going to be like, well, it's even worse now because, you know, have this. They are online. They're getting all this attention online. So this is a time when people still kind of had to go outside to meet people. Now, of course, you can still meet people online in 2005, and it was definitely popular to do so, but people still largely met outside of the internet. We're going to take a look at Rotten Tomatoes. So we're basically taking a look at how the show was received. Looks like they give them a 84 on the tomato meter and 84 on the audience score. So the average audience score kind of lines up with the tomato meter. Looks like the audience score and the average tomato meter line right up. And I would say that, yes, the show is overall received well. Most people like the show. There are a few criticisms that we'll get into, but as you'll see, those criticisms, they stem from part of some of the breakdowns we're going to be doing today. I want to take a deep look at the first comment, because this is one that we're going to see a lot, and it goes into a point I want to make later. And so it says, a wonderful show with a bad ending. This person gave it a 9 out of 10. They obviously liked the show, but they didn't like the end. They're going to say that's a common criticism. 8 out of 10, really funny. Says How I Met Your Mother will go down as one of the better comedies of all time, and rightfully so, but there's no doubt as to who the best part of the show, and that's Neil Patrick Harris. He steals every scene that he's in, and it's funny. The first season isn't as good. Also, as most have already said, it has one of the worst finales to a show in television, in the history of television. If for some reason you're one of the people who haven't seen this yet, I highly recommend you do so. So again, this person, just like the previous, gave it also a high score, said it was really funny, but if you paid attention, you would have actually noticed something that kind of gave it away that I'm going to talk about of why a lot of people have this criticism with the show. And that is the first season isn't as good, so you may have to power through it. I'm just going to go on a little rant here, right? A lot of people started watching the show after the first few seasons. It did have a small cult following at first, which is why I was able to keep going with the seasons, but later on, more people got interested in the show, and that's the criticism I feel comes a lot from those people who aren't true fans of the show. Because I watched the show from day one. Very first episode, I waited for it. Actually, I remember this episode coming out. I waited to watch this episode for weeks, months maybe, and yeah, I was not disappointed. I loved the show from beginning to end. The show gave me everything I expected, nothing more, nothing less. And so that's my issue was like some people, this show got popular because of the shows. You know, people like to jump on the bandwagon of things. Oh, this is popular. Oh, now everybody's watching this. I need to watch it. A lot of people are more sheep than they like to admit. And I don't watch shows just because it's popular. Somebody says, hey man, you check out this new show, it's really hot. I watch shows that are interesting to me and that I am interested in watching, so it's on my own time. But yeah, they still give it very good reviews though. Why is that? Alright, here's another 8 out of 10, one of the more original and funny sitcoms I've been watching. After all, it was bad, it would not last for almost, if it was bad, it would not last for almost a decade. I've heard they spoiled it near the end, but after 5 seasons, I have absolutely no objections. So again, as I said, you know, it's the end. This person didn't seem that they even watched it. Does this sound like fans of the show? One didn't even watch it until it had came out, probably maybe a year or two. And I get sometimes that happens, and I'm not holding that against them. Then they make the same objection as people that didn't watch it at first or haven't even finished it. Like this guy here, 9 out of 10 will be remembered for its wit, charm, one-liners, slaps, and the bro code, not for its bad ending. So even this person is saying that they're giving it a compliment by saying it's going to be remembered for all the good things about it rather than the bad ending, but they also think it's a bad ending. And that could be true. That could be true of somebody that's watched the show from the very beginning and just was like, yeah, I didn't like the ending. But I would argue that if you watch it from the beginning and you watch it, you're an avid watcher, you're going to watch it to the end. And you're going to, for the most part, be satisfied with the end because you're invested that much. And the name of the show is How I Met Your Mother. We're not lost as to how the story plays out. You shouldn't be. So a lot of, as you can see, the critics are giving it a very good score. I would say, on average, How I Met Your Mother gets like a 9 out of, or 8.5 out of 10. They're basically going to go over 10 ways of how I Met Your Mother has aged poorly. Now, there's a caveat to this. Most of the objections, and I pulled up two different ones, most of the objections are going to have to do with one or two things. One, the ending, as we've already showed, and two, have to do with what a lot of people, as you saw from the previous comments, consider the most crucial part of the show, the most pertinent part of the show, which is Barney, his jokes, the one-liners. This is what I mean. They're going to criticize show that most people like for the character Barney and his views, right? So most of the criticism is going to be tied around Barney's character and how he actually, does things. Another criticism you might hear is one that has to do with Ted being not such a good guy. I only agree partially with that statement. Mostly because it has less to do with Ted and more to do with the term good guy. I just don't want to get into that part right now, but I don't like the term good guy. I think that people are just people with their own self-interest. So there's no difference. There's no difference between a good guy and a bad guy, because then we'd have to get into the definition of good and bad, and what's good, what's bad. So again, those are the three: either the show's ending, the character Barney, and the way he is portrayed on the show, and Ted. All right. So again, this goes to Barney, first one. Way too, these people can't even spell. So I'm assuming they meant to say way too many misogynistic jokes that revolve around naive women. So again, one of the criticisms of the show, and this is why How I Met Your Father will never, ever even sniff a fraction of the success that How I Met Your Mother was able to attain, because they're too old. Yes, some of the women are portrayed as really stupid, but let's be honest, we know a lot of stupid people, like men and women. So I'd say this is based in reality. The women are made to be not to look and be that naive because that's the way the director wants to portray it. Remember the woman, right? The woman director that directed 196 out of 208 episodes. That's the way she wants to portray them. Why? Because if Barney is able to sleep with them, these girls have to be stupid. They have to be naive. This is a way that women actually denigrate other women. They'll say that it's the man. One of How I Met Your Mother's favorite jokes is introducing naive or childish female characters to make fun of them later. For example, most of Barney's girlfriends are so-called bimbos, and most of the characters make fun of them because they don't respect themselves or because they're too dumb. Some of the guest stars in How I Met Your Mother were Barney's victims, characters like Honey, played by Katy Perry, Becky, played by Laura Bell Bundy, and Abby, played by Britney Spears, were introduced solely as the butt of these jokes. Lily and Rachel were especially mean to these characters, thinking they are superior since they consider themselves more intelligent and interesting. Man, guys, please tell me you noticed. If you are an avid How I Met Your Mother fan, you would have noticed this is a joke article, because if you notice, they say Lily and Rachel. That means that somebody actually, while writing this article, wrote the name Rachel. It passed through many levels to be published, and it's Robin, not Rachel. And that right there alone should tell you all that needs to be told about this article. And it says, they call them victims. Are women willing participants, or are they childlike adults? I hate this. This is the same argument they make when they're talking about older men dating younger women, and you're basically infantilizing grown women. And they are also portrayed on the show in that way so that you can see them as victims, but in reality, they're willing participants. This is the result of the sexual revolution. Women want a sexual revolution. They wanted to go and have sex like men. And this is part of it. So here we go again. There were too many xenophobic jokes. So again, just woke crap. Besides making fun of other characters, especially women, the show was directed by a woman. Are we in La La Land here? This is crazy to me. The show was directed by a woman. She portrayed them in that way. Another favorite joke for How I Met Your Mother is making fun of people of different nationalities. The show constantly reproduces many stereotypes about other countries, such as the recurrent gag of Robin being Canadian. That's a stereotypical joke about Canadians. There's nothing dehumanizing or deeming them as less than to make these jokes about Canadians. But again, this article has already, shown its true colors. It doesn't care much about the show itself. It probably hasn't watched, or whoever wrote this article probably hasn't watched the show that well, that they think one of the main characters is Rachel instead of Robin. They're just looking for ways that, like, hey, we need to attack the show, let's attack it. And see, that's why I want to break it down, because it really did. How I Met Your Mother, honestly, because I'm rewatching a lot of the episodes now, How I Met Your Mother, it can be used to red pill many men. You just read between the lines. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. You're not going to get this kind of information anywhere else on YouTube. Nobody else in this space is doing what this channel is doing. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Feminist Media Podcast. Let's continue. So here we go. This is what I have a problem with. Ted isn't better than a nice guy. What is a nice guy? What is the definition of nice? Or not even definition. I need you, kind of the definition of nice, but what is nice? What is that characteristic? So throughout the show, the audience roots for Ted to find the love of his life. He's a hopeless romantic who firmly believes he will find the one in a predestined way, and then this will make everything in his life finally make sense. However, soon this becomes a harder feat than he thought. As Ted's romantic failures pile on, he becomes increasingly bitter about dating. He doesn't understand why women would commit to him if he's actually a good guy. Throughout time, it's become obvious to viewers that Ted is definitely a walking red flag. So let's rewind that. As Ted's romantic failures pile on, he becomes increasingly bitter about dating. Guys, if you're a young man and you're watching this, if you're an older male and you're watching this, you fully understand that statement. But if you're a younger male and you're not understanding that statement, that's because you haven't experienced it yet. But yes, as men date as they get older and they're still dating, they become not necessarily bitter about dating, they become more realistic about dating. They start to realize the longer that they're out there, how they're viewed by women. See, when you're young, especially with all this media, there's all these shows and these movies, you are also given a rose-colored lens when you're watching these things, and it makes you think that this is the way the world is. But when you turn on this show here, we don't have rose-colored lenses. They have a problem with Ted becoming more bitter. Actually, I call it becoming more realistic about dating when he gets older. But even then, Ted is still, he has the one, he still is searching for the one. So I'm barely gonna discuss this. The show was stretched more than it should have. What did you expect? The show was called How I Met Your Mother. What do you think happens once the lead character meets the mom? The show's over, stupid. The show is called How I Met Your Mother, not How I Met Your Mother and live a decent life, and then something happened, and later on, I'm telling the story to my kids. No, that's not, I don't want to give out too much. But the show is called How I Met Your Mother. Once he meets the mother, the show's over. And you're going to see a similar complaint with that about the last season, which I will address that shortly. Robin's character development got worse and worse. Robin is one of the most poorly written characters in sitcoms, while at the beginning of the show, Robin is an ordinary woman trying to make a life in New York. As the show progresses, they make her more mean and biodimensional as a character. Robin turns cynical, self-absorbed, and even more cruel at points in a way hardly justified by the TV show. Fans of the show have argued most of the development of the show's character is determined by Ted's narrative. It makes sense that Ted's perspective of Robin shifted in later seasons since she started dating Barney, so spoilers alert. However, it's hard for the audience of a sitcom to connect with a cartoonish character even if it is the result of a narrative device. I would say that Robin didn't get more mean and her development did get worse. I would say that Ted had already, been with her, so just don't know very much about her in the first few episodes. But I don't think her character development was that crazy. I think that they wanted Robin, and I'll explain that later in the episode, but they wanted Robin's character to be this one for all. She's like a modern woman. She's the typical modern woman. She focuses on her career. She's like that go-getter, but also she's a tomboy. She's boy-like. She also has this girly side. There's too much going on for her character. And that's because, and I'll explain that later, but that's because they wanted her character to be a be-all or one and all for a lot of different sections of women. They wanted to display it all in one. And if you're looking at it from what they're saying, that, well, her character development got worse because of Ted, that's how Ted viewed her. I would also make the argument that her character development did get worse. Ted was just, the post-nut clarity had set in. I'll say that. This is actually a valid criticism that I have with it. I'm not saying that I was satisfied with the ending. I was like, okay, yeah, I could see that happening. It wasn't like I was so disappointed with the ending, but it wasn't like I was also so hyped about the ending. They're like, oh man, that was the greatest. So I agree with them on some aspects, but I would argue that the reason it ended the way it did in some parts is part of the narrative that I am pushing on this show. The reason why it ended the way it did is the reason why I'm breaking down shows and movies like this, because they wanted push a narrative. So I will agree that, yeah, some of the ending made no sense. I'm not going to get into exactly why that is. If you want to know why that is, subscribe to the channel. I will talk about that in a future episode for sure. But let's continue on. So it says the premise of How I Met Your Mother is pretty straightforward, which I agree. Ted tells his children about how he met their mother, even though Ted definitely gets a lot out of his way to tell the story. The fact that it was about Robin all along disappointed many fans. Robin and Ted's romance was clearly toxic. Here we go. Barney lying to women was too normalized. Barney's character definitely aged poorly from the show's beginning. Barney is introduced as the playboy of the group, just like Joey and Friends. However, Barney takes it further than any of his sitcom counterparts. He constantly lies to women to get them to have sex with him, and he even has a book called The Playbook. Even though the rest of the characters constantly describe Barney as disgusting, they often become a part of his schemes. On top of that, throughout most of the show, none go out of their way to stop Barney's terrible treatment of women. Newer audience know better than to find this character appealing or funny. But yet, this show is well liked, highly liked, as we saw from the Tomato Meter and the average audience score. But they would say, these are the same people that would say How I Met Your Father is a great show. Get out of here. So lying to women is too normalized. Like, as people don't lie to each other, women included. Women wear makeup. That's one of the that's a lie you tell before you even step out of your front door. Here it is. So this one here. The last season felt like a very long bottle episode. One of the biggest criticisms for How I Met Your Mother has received is the fact that the last season centered around Barney and Robin's wedding. While most characters are hanging out in the hotel where the wedding is taking place, Marshall is moving throughout the country trying to get there in time. Here's my thing. The first 8 seasons of How I Met Your Mother, we know the premise, right? We know the premise is, well, it's how we met their mom. So, the last season, why would I want that last season to be like every other season previous? This is the last season of How I Met Your Mother. By now, Ted has met the mom. There's a possibility that he's going to propose marriage, all that stuff. So the last season is actually, I think, a week long instead of, and that's what's so unique. And that's one of the things I actually liked about last season. The series or the show season was, of course, over a regular season from fall to May, so like September to May. But in the show, it was only a week long. So I did like that. And again, if you're criticizing the last season for that, that's, to me, if you were a fan and watched it from the beginning, why would that be a valid criticism? The last season is very different from the others. Good, because I need to understand that, I need to see it visually too, that this show's coming to an end. It's like slowing down the last season so you can take it all in, and that helps accept that the show is coming to an end, in my opinion. So I don't have any issue on that. And there's no diversity in the show. I'm not even going to talk about Barney's I'm not going to talk about the fact that the lead character is gay in real life, Neil Patrick Harris. And at the time of the show, I think he was openly gay. I'm not going to talk about the fact that Lily had a college roommate that was black, that there was a whole episode on that. I'm not going to talk about the fact that Barney's half-brother, who was black, played by Wayne Brady, is gay on the show. Sarah Chalk was on here from Scrubs. There was a new woman almost every week. Nicole Scherzinger, I can't think of how to pronounce her name, from the Pussycat Dolls. She was on here, Britney Spears. This criticism doesn't even warrant a comment, but I will just wrap it up by saying that I disagree with, there not being any diversity on the show. You could say the same thing about Friends, or you could say the same thing about black-led shows, like Living Single. There's hardly any diversity, it's just black women or black men. Like, come on. I just wanted to go over some basic criticism of the show. But as you can see, some of those criticisms have to do with what actually made the show popular, which is, again, why I don't believe How I Met Your Father will be nowhere near as impactful as How I Met Your Mother. If I had to guess, How I Met Your Father tries to take some of the good things from How I Met Your Mother without being too offensive, which will not work, while at the same time tapping into almost like that drama that women like to get them to feel for a character. Like I said, they'll try to pull from things that made How I Met Your Mother successful. The jokes, the one-liners, the framing device of going back into the past to retell stories. It's gonna just be a regurgitation of How I Met Your Mother from a female perspective, and it's gonna be diluted down. It's just a derivative of How I Met Your Mother. It's just cheap derivative, that's it. So again, that was How I Met Your Mother. It was a little bit about the premise, the actors, what the show is about a little bit. It had some spoilers in there, but not too many. Again, if you, what I suggest is watching the show, coming back, watching our breakdown of the episode, and then rewatching the show, seeing with the new lens on to see if you see any correlations as well. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and transition into our next part. Now that we've kind of talked about the show a little bit, went over the show, the characters, we're going to go ahead and transition into our next part of the episode, which is taking a look at the data for episode 1 of How I Met Your Mother, which will be on men and marriage. So let's go ahead and get right into that transition. We got a few articles here that I want to kind of look over on men and marriage. This one, and I got them from different sites. I tried to be as diverse as possible. Have a few from the left, a few from the right, and a few that are just straight down the middle. This one, of course, is from the Huffington Post. It's a Huffington Post article, 8 Reasons Straight Men Don't Want to Get Married. It's by Helen Smith. This was produced June 20th, 2013, updated August 20th, 2013. So this is like 10 years ago. And it's going to give us 8 reasons. And a few of these are actually right on point. And what you'll see as we look over different articles, what you'll see is a lot of overlap in the reasons that men don't want to get married. And you will actually in more detail as we break down the episodes of How I Met Your Mother, or at least the first. So men no longer see marriage as being important as important as it did even 15 years ago. According to the Pew Research Center, the share of women ages 18 to 34 that say having a successful marriage is one of the most important things in their lives rose 9 percentage points since 1997, from 28 to 37%. For men, the opposite occurred. The share voicing this opinion dropped from 35% to 29%. So what they're basically saying here is that since 1997, having a successful marriage, and this is from women and men ages 18 to 34, it seems, they asked them having a successful marriage is one of the important things. So they asked people 15 years ago, and then they asked again and 15 years later, and women actually went up. Even though we've got this boss chick, independent women, I don't need no man society, what they're saying is that women actually says that having a successful marriage is one of the most important things. And for men, it went from 35% to 29%. So they want to know, why did that happen? Because for women, for more would be like, ooh, that would be, I want to have a successful marriage as a part of the reason for me living. That makes sense, it going up. But when you have a drop that's that dramatic and it's coming from the man, then they're like, oh, what's going on? We gotta figure this out. So of course she's selling something. In the course of researching my new book, Men on Strike, why men are boycotting marriage, fatherhood, and the dream, and why it matters. I talked with men all over America why they're avoiding marriage. It turns out that the problem isn't that men are immature or lazy. Instead, they're responding rationally to the incentives in today's society. Here are some of the answers I found. Hold on, I want to what she just said in this article. She says that men aren't immature or lazy. Instead, they're responding rationally to the incentives in today's society. I want to concentrate on, of course men are responding rationally, but I wanted to concentrate on the incentives part because I'm a big proponent of that. Incentives make the world go round. And I think clinical psychology has also figured this out. People respond to incentives. So if there is incentive for me to do something, I will more than likely do it. But if there's an incentive for me to not do something, I will more than likely not do it. If there is no incentive for me to do something, I will more than likely not do it. So you'll lose respect. This is reason number one. Now, I don't know if these reasons are in line from least to highest or highest to least in importance, but the first one that we have is you'll lose respect, and we will talk about this in the episode as well. So I will point these out as I look over them. A couple of generations ago, a man wasn't considered fully adult until he was married with kids. Now that part there, a man wasn't considered fully adult until he was married with kids. You'll hear me concentrate on that in the episode, that marriage in the past was a thing of status for a lot of men. And remember, women, that's why women also like men who are married. There's also some pre-selection there, but this man obviously is of a good stature to get a woman to marry him. So marriage is a status thing for a lot of men. So I want you to remember that. But today, fathers are figures of fun more than figures of respect. The schlubby guy with the flowered diaper bag at the mall, or one of the endless array of buffoonish TV dads in sitcoms and commercials. We will be getting into that. In today's culture, father never knows best. It's no better in the news media. As communications professor James McNamara reports, by volume, 69% of mass media reporting and commentary on men was unfavorable. 69% of mass media reporting and commentary on men was unfavorable. Guys, this is why I do what I'm doing. This is why we do this show on the show. Because this is in 2013. You can't imagine it gotten that much better. So again, 69 unfavorable for men compared to just 12% favorable and 19% neutral or balanced. That is crazy. Guys, if you have any doubt why I'm putting on this mask, getting in front of this camera, taking my time to build this for y'all, that stat alone is the reason right there. So if you want to know why I'm doing what I'm doing, that stat should tell you right there. 60, that's basically 70% of mass media reporting on men is just not good. If you want to support the channel, you truly want to support the channel, like the video and subscribe to the channel. You subscribe to the channel, you're going to get new updates on new videos, new content pushing out every week. So again, like the video, subscribe to the channel, help our channel grow. Get into the second one, which I think the second reason is probably one of the biggest, if you ask men, because why buy the cow when I can get the milk for free? So you'll lose out on sex. It says married men have more sex than single men on average, but much less than men who are cohabitating with their partners outside of marriage, especially as time goes on. So I want you to pay attention to that stat right there, because you're going to see that conflict with another stat from another article we go over. It says that married men have more sex than single men on average. That is true, but much less than men who are just cohabitating with their partners. outside of marriage, especially as time goes on. That's the selling point right there for men, to not get married. Well, we'll lose out on sex. It's like, I'll have more sex if I just build myself up as a man, especially as I get older. So research even suggests that married women are more likely to gain weight than women who are cohabitating without marriage. I wonder why. They haven't gotten the ring yet, so they know they're in constant competition for that guy's favor. So they better not let themselves go to waste. Health article mentioned one study that followed 2,737 people for 6 years and found that cohabitators said that they were happier and more confident than married couples and singles. So number 3, I would say this is as well. You'll lose friends, and we're gonna actually discuss this one here. You'll lose friends. So those wedding bells are breaking up the old gang of mine. That's an old song, but it's true. When married, men's ties with friends from school and work tend to fade. Although both men and women lose friends after marriage, it tends to affect men's self-esteem more, perhaps because men tend to be less social in general. So basically, yes, we know that to be true. Men are less social than women. Women are more social creatures. Of course, you spend less time with your friends because you have to take care of, you are now married and you possibly have a kid on the way. So I'd say that's not as high up, but it's up there. Thus far, sex is number 1, respect is number 2. And this was number 3. You'll lose space. We hear a lot about men retreating to their man caves, but why do they retreat? Because they've lost the battle for the rest of the house. The Art of Manliness blog mourns the decline of male space and notes that the development of suburban lifestyles intended to bring the family together resulted in the elimination of male spaces in the main part of the house and the exile of men to attics, garages, basements, the least desirable part of the home. As a commenter to the post observes, there was no sadder scene to a movie than in Juno when married guy Jason Bateman realized that in his entire house, his entire huge house, he had only a large closet to keep all the stuff he loved in. That hit me like a punch in the face. Very true, very true. Losing space is up there. It's not as important as sex and probably even respect. It's up there. I'd say because these two are pretty hand in hand. You could lose your kids and money and you can lose in court. I would say that falls at the very top. These two fall at the top. Sex comes second. Respects come third. Space and friends tie for fourth, right? So you could lose your kids and your money, and they may not even be your kids. So lots of men I spoke with were keenly aware of the dangers of divorce and worried if they were married and it went sour, the woman might take everything, including the kids.
You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
Other men were convinced or concerned that they might wind up paying child support for kids who aren't even theirs. A very real possibility in many states. So on my blog, I polled over 3,200 men to ask how they would react to finding out that a child wasn't theirs after all. 32% said that they would feel anger and fury at the mother, 6% said they would feel depression, 18% said anger and depression, 2% said none of the above, 32% said anger at the system that forced them to pay, and only 2% didn't care. One man commented that his ex-wife had taunted him with the knowledge that his 11-year-old son wasn't actually his. I was angry at the mother. I severed all ties to the boy. Some people may see this as failing. I see it as self-preservation. And to those that ask the question of whether or not the courts will make a non-biological parent pay child support, pay attention. Yes, they will. They see you as nothing more than a source of cash for the child. It seems that a person in these situations should be able to sue the real father for child support. Right. So this guy, first of all, the lady, she fucked around and found out for sure. But this guy was like, I was angry at the mother and I severed all ties to the boy. People were like, well, why would you do that?
Why? Because fuck them, that's why.
He said, no way, no how. I do not blame him. So that's a point. We know that the court system is stacked against men. We've all heard the horror stories. You can look at the data statistics. So, you know, we don't even need to really go over that too much more. And that is tied into the reason number 6. That's why I put them together. You'll lose in court. Men often complain that the family court legal system is stacked against them. and in fact, it seems to be women gain custody and child support the majority of time. Yeah, we already know this. As pointed out in this new ABC News article, despite the increases in men seeking and receiving alimony, advocates warn against linking the trend to equality in the courtroom. Family court judges still tend to favor women, said Ned Holston, the founder of Fathers and Families, a group advocating family court reform. Family court still gives custody overwhelmingly to mothers, child support overwhelmingly to mothers, and courts still give alimony overwhelmingly to mothers and women, he said. The family courts came into existence years ago in order to give things to mothers that mothers needed. The times have changed and the courts have not. Yes, and we are well aware of this. This is why men are not buying into the idea of marriage today, right? In a couple of these next articles, you're actually going to see them almost trying to sell benefits of marriage to men. So it says you'll lose your freedom. Yeah, and this is kind of tied into the other one as well. At least if you're charged with child support that you can't pay, you can be put in jail. And if you can't afford a lawyer, you don't have the right to have one appointed because, according to the Supreme Court, it's technically a civil matter, never mind the jail time. So basically the Supreme Court says that it is out of their jurisdiction. It's a civil matter. So even if you are spending time in jail, that has nothing, you can't fight it that way. It's a civil matter. They don't view that as in their purview. They view it as a civil matter. And let's read this one. Fathers and Families found that it's the men who are jailed rather than women. A new report concludes that between 95 and 98.5% of all incarcerations in Massachusetts sentenced from the Massachusetts Probate and Family Courts from 2001 through 2011 have been men. Wow. Moreover, this percentage may be increasing with an average of 94.5% from 2001 to 2008 and 96.2% from 2009 to 2011. It is likely that most of these incarcerations are for incomplete payment of child support. Further analysis suggests that women who fail to pay all of their child support are incarcerated only 1/8 as often as men with similar violations. So guys, there you go. There he is. They are laying it out. And this is in 2013. This is, so if you want to get married with all these statistics and all this data right at your fingertips, you get finessed when she divorces you. So the moment you're down on your knee, the moment you think about asking a woman to marry you, but the moment you get down on that knee and you present her with that ring and she says yes,
Serious mistake.
So let's look at the last reason here. I don't know if this one is quite true because they did just say that single men have sex less than married men, who have sex less than cohabitating men. So I don't necessarily know I would say single life is better than ever. It is, with the caveat if you are working on yourself and you're achieving things. Because while the value of marriage to men has declined, the quality of single life has improved. As long as you're working on yourself and you're achieving the things that women find valuable or attractive in men. Single men were once looked on with suspicion, passed over for promotion for important jobs, which usually valued stable family men and often subjected to social. So let's look at this. Single men were once looked on with suspicion, passed over for promotion for important jobs, which usually valued stable family men. Here, they're pretty much telling you, right, that single men used to be looked on with suspicion. So, if you were a single male bachelor, of course you were going to be passed over for a job promotion over a guy that had the similar background or similar traits as you did, but he was married and with kids. He seemed more stable. And the reason I bring that up is because later in a few of the other articles, you're going to see them talk about, as part of the benefits of getting married, is that, well, you make more money as a married man. Your married counterparts make this much percentage higher than you on average. That's because in the past, single men were looked on with suspicion, so they didn't get they didn't look stable. A single man, well, what is he working for? He could be a liability. He could be also there could be the issue. This is back in the past. I don't think that's as prevalent today. Like I said, later on, pay attention to that. Later on, they're gonna talk about, well, that's one of the reasons you should get married. One of the selling points, you'll make more money. Your counterparts make this much percentage more than you. But if you're gonna get married, and there's a 80% chance you'll likely be divorced by the woman, and you will lose in court, you'll lose your kids and your money, and most likely your freedom. Well, who cares that they're making more than me, a slight percentage more, or sometimes it's a good percentage more, when there's a higher probability that the woman's going to take most of that, or at least half. So I just found that funny. I don't know why they admitted that. They're basically saying that men in the past were ostracized for being single and unmarried, and that they're trying to sell it now is that you should, you get married though because your counterparts make more money. It's crazy. Your married counterparts make more money, but there is a chance that you're likely lose that money along with your kids. If you put all the pieces together, like logical people are looking at that like. So let's go ahead and move on to the next article here. All right, our next article is coming from the Institute for Family Studies. So obviously this is probably more right-wing data. First stats that we looked at was from Huffington Post. It was 2013. This is from the Institute for Family Studies. So this is Men in Marriage, Debunking the Ball and Chain Myth. It was written by Bradford Wilcox and H. Wolfinger. Marriage is not worth it for men. It's not worth the practical and financial sacrifices, the lost romantic opportunities, or the lack of freedom. All in all, a spouse is a ball and chain of little benefit to any man interested in pursuing happiness and well-being. And as you can see, it deals with financial, lost romantic, lack of freedom. These are similar reasons that the Huffington Post article named as some of the reasons that men choose not to get married today. So let's continue on. Considering both the latest survey data and the continued decline in the marriage rate, it's fair to say that this viewpoint is becoming more entrenched in our society, particularly among younger men. But despite its prevalence, the ball and chain view of marriage is simply not supported by the research. Indeed, the benefits of marriage for men are substantial by every conceivable measure, including more money, a better sex life, and significantly better physical and mental health. Yet many men remain ignorant of those benefits, a view seemingly promoted by popular culture. Now, again, they are trying to sell you, and this is probably more of a right-leaning, conservative, traditional study or institute. They're trying to on the idea of marriage, especially young men, which is why they pointed that out. We're going to debunk a few of what they just said, though, right? A few of the statements they just made. Indeed, the benefits of marriage for men are substantial by every conceivable measure, including more money, a better sex life, and significantly better physical and mental health. Okay, so as we just reviewed, they're going to use the same metric, which is married men make more than their single or cohabitating counterparts on average. There is a historical reason behind that, and that's because single bachelor men are seen as liabilities, so they are often passed up on promotions for more stable family men. We already know that is not true. That's not entirely true. Yes, they make more money, but there's a reason for that. And even though they make more money, they have a higher percentage of getting that money taken from the courts and given to the mother. A better sex life. Again, this is also incorrect, as we just learned. You'll see from this Institute for Family Studies, by their own metrics, that is also incorrect. It's a reason they use a better sex life. What is better? What is the definition of better? What does that mean? What's better for one person, worse for another, and what's person could be better for another. So they say a better sex life, and that is, I just think that's incorrect. They're using a metric in which men usually don't use, or men typically don't use to judge their sex life. They're using the metric of quality versus quantity, and we already know that men prefer quantity over quality. It is biologically written into our DNA, which is why, we can have as many children a year as possible. Yet many men remain ignorant of these benefits, a view seemingly promoted by popular culture. So let's take a look at what their data says. Right? So there's no doubt that marriage requires sacrifices, and lots of them. Successful marriages require men to work harder, avoid cheating, spend less time with their friends, and make a good faith effort day in, day out to be emotionally present with their spouses. Being a good husband isn't always easy. Again, why would you buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? Now, they say that marriage requires all these sacrifices, lots of them, and it requires us to work harder, avoid cheating, spend less time with friends, which goes back to one of the reasons that, at least the Huffington Post said, that men don't want to get married is you lose out on friends. So why would we want to do all of these things to get something that very frankly has a low return on investment, even though they're going to try to sell you that it's a high return on investment. So it says, it turns out that these sacrifices pay for themselves and more. And down here, this is where they're going to kind of try to tell you where that is. So we're going to look at money, right? And as I've stated before, men who are married, of course, they have a higher incentive also as well to make more money because they have no choice. It's not that men who are unmarried choose to not make as much money, but there's not also the same incentives in place, such as kids and taking care of a family, that will, spur men to put their bodies on the line. And that doesn't make it a bad thing, because you could do that for so long, your wife divorce you, and then all that work would have been for nothing really, if you ask me. But let's continue. So when it comes to work and money, marriage has a transformative effect upon men. Married men typically work harder, smarter, and more successfully. They are less likely to be fired, and they make about $16,000 more than their single peers with otherwise similar backgrounds. This is what economists call men's marriage premium. Again, going back to money, this is their big selling point. Money. You make money. You don't want to make more money, as much money as your married counterparts. But they don't add the caveat that, there's a 50% chance that your wife, though, is going to divorce you and take most of that money. And then you're going to be forced to keep paying child support. And now you get none of those benefits, and it's all debt. So, again, not a good selling point. Just money alone? No. So over here you can see the median wealth by marital status in 2000. So this probably looks like this is a little bit earlier, 2003, maybe 2002, early 2000s. Men in first marriages, 167,719. Never married, 36,000, and married and divorced men, 48. Let's focus. Why is there a big so if they're gonna sell you on the money part, a lot of you will end up over here in the married and divorced men eventually. The stats don't lie. Why would I want to be over here, go through all that stress to only be making $12,000 more than a man that's never been married? So if you read between the lines, pay attention, you'll notice that they're trying to sell you on this by using the money metric. But if you actually read between the lines, and this is one of those lines, this is one right here, 36 to 48. But if I get the 48,000, that means I'm married and divorced. That means I'm getting financially great, if you know what I mean. So again, they're trying to sell you on the money that married men make more, but if you actually look at those, even their own numbers show you there's very little benefit. So if you're the men in their first marriages, you're making this much, but when your wife divorces you and takes smoke, they're saying this is about how much you are making. Do you think that is a good enough reason to get married, that money based on their own data they showed you? 12,000 more to be a married and divorced man versus a never married man.
Another one.
Down here, look at this. The risk of divorce. So as you see, they put all of this in white, but in gray down here, they give you, hey, well, here's a little disclaimer though. The risk of divorce. So I am going to read this. So the science could not be clearer. On average, men enjoy more money, better sex, and better health when they are married, but of course not everyone who gets married will stay married. About 42% of first marriages end in divorce, and the majority of these divorces are initiated by women.
Another one.
So about 42% of first marriages end in divorce. So as you see, they got down here this little, gray area, little small disclaimer about divorce. So it says the science could not be clearer. On average, men enjoy more money, better sex, and better health when they are married, but of course not everyone who gets married will stay married. About 42% of first marriages end in divorce, and the majority of these divorces are initiated by women. This means that a large minority of men who marry will end up unwillingly divorced. These men don't realize much of a return on their investments in married life. Again, what did I say earlier? If you stay married, you see a good return on your investment. But if you end up divorced, you actually see a very small return on investment, because you're just as staying never married as being married and divorced. Even their own bar chart shows you this. And let's just read the last little thing. So the accumulated wisdom of social science suggests there are a number of things men can do to reduce the risk of a divorce. Men who do their best to hold down a stable job, who don't abuse drugs or alcohol, who are sexually faithful, who attend religious service regularly with their wives, and who make a regular effort to be emotionally engaged in their marriage are less likely to divorce. Men seeking to avoid divorce should be aware of these facts. Again, these are a lot of requirements just to get and stay married, to see that little return on investment that you're talking about. Money, sex, physical. So the three that they try to sell on this one, on the Institute for Family Studies, is better sex, more money, and better physical and mental health. And only one of those metrics can actually be measured tangibly. The other two, they're basically subjective. It depends on the person. Married men find sex more emotionally and physically pleasurable than their unmarried peers. How do you measure that? And I'm pretty sure there's a way they came up with to measure that metric, but how do the emotional and physically pleasurable? As far as I remember, every guy's ejaculation ends with a orgasm. Most guys' ejaculations end with an orgasm. So I don't understand how, married men find sex more physically pleasurable than their unmarried counterparts when they both are achieving their completion. So when it comes to quantity of sex, married men do not have an advantage over their cohabiting peers. Again, let's reread that. When it comes to the quantity of sex, married men do not have an advantage over their cohabiting peers. Basically what I just stated earlier, men care about quantity, not quality. But they're trying to go ahead and throw that out in the beginning and say, well, when it comes to quantity of sex, married men don't have as much as their cohabiting peers. but they're going to sell you on something else besides the quantity. But that's not what men enjoy when it comes to sexual pleasure. According to the General Social Survey, 52% of cohabitating young men aged 20 to 39 have sex at least twice a week, compared to 42% of married men. Single men have the least sex, with only 37% of single males in their 20s and 30s having twice weekly sex. Of course, many single men don't have single sex partners. This is a problem married and cohabiting men just don't have. So, yes, if you're a single male and you don't have a partner, yes, that just by logic, unless you're a Chad or Tyrone, you're going to have less sex than a cohabitating and married man will. But they're still stating that the married men are still having less sex than the cohabitating. So again, why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? Now, does this decide the issue of favor in cohabitating men? Not if the quality of sex matters. This is where they're trying to sell you. Not if the quality of sex matters. We are not women. Men care about quantity, not quality. So now they're going to throw out another statistic. It's not really related to the point that we're talking about here when we're talking about better sex lives, right? Because if we're going by men's metric, men would much prefer quantity over quality, versus women would definitely prefer quality over quantity. So they're going to give you this statistic. 51% of married men report they were extremely satisfied with their sex lives, compared to 39% of cohabitating men and 36% of single men. And I would imagine that those married men, well, they've already bought the line, already bought it, hook, line, and sinker. They bought it or in the marriage. So of course, I would argue those men have a incentive to say that they are satisfied, because if you're not, then why are you married to that person? For men, sex is a big component, which is why a lot of men don't want to get married, because I think approximately about 1/3 of married men are in sexless marriages. And why would a man want to get married to potentially a sexless marriage when those married men still have less sex than cohabitating men on average? A majority of married men also found sex extremely physically pleasurable, compared to a minority of men in unmarried relationships, as the figure below indicates. Contrary to all the conventional wisdom, married men find sex more emotionally and physically pleasurable than their unmarried peers. They are invested in that marriage though, so of course they're gonna, yeah, I'm happy, I'm extremely satisfied. Men reporting they are extremely satisfied with physical quality of their sex lives. 54% married, 43% single, 44% cohabitating. So married men still, if we're talking, and we've already debunked the fact that married men are having better sex because they're not having as much sex as cohabitating men. So by the man's metric, more sex is always better than less sex. So that is incorrect, that they're having better, married men have better sex lives. But even if we look at this bar chart, according to their now metric of physical quality of their sex lives, are they extremely satisfied, which is an emotional appeal. 54% of married and 44% cohabitating. So they only have a 10% increase over cohabitating males. And then I would also argue that those married males are invested in that marriage. It wouldn't make sense for them to not be extremely satisfied, because they pay the highest price for the woman's marriage. So of course they are highly invested. And then if you look at the single males are only 43%. They're only 1% less than cohabitating, which goes to show that in reality, the single male is actually the best when it comes to extremely satisfied. And that's because the single male takes sex on his terms. Now, he can't have it without the woman, of course, without her consent, but he is not having sex with the same person. He's not in a relationship necessarily. So he's engaging in multiple different partners as often as he can. Now, which to me even proves further that men care more about quantity than quality, because the single male, as we just stated, doesn't even have sex as much as the married or the cohabitating, but when it comes to how satisfied they are with their sex lives, they are not they're neck and with cohabitating males, and they're not far behind married men, which goes to show, because those single males are having different sex partners, that they find that more satisfying than having the same partner that you're having sex with, even if you're having sex with that partner 3 times a week. And why do cohabitating men have sex more often than married men? It's probably because cohabitating relationships aren't as stable as marriage. This means that all of the cohabitating adults at any given point in time are in newer relationships than average married men. So it's the newness of the relationship that leads to more sex, not anything special about cohabitation. So you're agreeing, they are telling you that the newness of the sexual partners is why cohabitating men have sex more often, which further proves my point that having multiple or having quantity of sexual partners as a male not only is the metric that they go by, but it's also even more extremely satisfying sex life. So again, this whole article is just, you just got to read between the lines. It's actually telling you why you should not get married. In other words, sex doesn't become less frequent when couples get married. Indeed, psychologists Scott Stanley and Howard Markman have shown that sexual frequency in cohabitating relationship isn't any higher after relationship duration is taken into account. So they're basically trying to sell you on that point that, well, if you actually look at it, when it comes to the quantity, because you see how they went from quantity of sex, then they went to an emotional pill, which is about quality of sex, which is what women care about, and now they're back down here on the quantity of sex. So they're basically trying to say that even though cohabitating men have more quantity of sex than married men, if we actually hold things equal, they're actually having about the same sex as married men. So you should just be married because you get all these benefits. Why does marriage make sex better? For starters, both spouses are making long-term investments in good sex life. One of these investments seems to be heightened intimacy. I don't disagree, but I think you can get that with a cohabitating partner as well. Especially the longer you're with them, which is even what they state when they talk about the longer the cohabitating person is with their partner versus the married partner, they're actually having about the same amount of sex. And that also goes for intimacy. Well, the longer a cohabitating couple is, the higher the intimacy is. Women are 4 times as likely as men to make love a requirement for having sex, and marriage is obviously a venue in which women are going to feel the love necessary for sexual engagement. As we can see, the women are having sex more frequently than ever. So I would argue that they don't need, and you see women that have plenty that have kids and that aren't married, meaning that they are very sexual outside of the frame of marriage. So I just don't agree with that. Surprisingly, men are more likely to experience men too are more likely to experience sexual satisfaction when they know they're in lasting relationships. So from a sexual perspective, research suggests that marriage is worth the commitment it requires. But you can get that same thing in a long-term relationship. So physical and mental health benefits. Man, I kind of don't even want to go into these, but let's go ahead and break it down. Men just don't enjoy better sex life when married. They are also more likely to experience better physical and emotional health. Research suggests that men who get and stay married live almost 10 years longer than their unmarried peers. What's more, marriage benefits health in numerous and surprising ways. For instance, a recent Harvard study found that even among men diagnosed with cancer, married men live significantly longer. What accounts for these surprising findings? Simply put, the companionship, the support, and even the nagging that men get from their wives in marriage translates into better physical health. I want to go back to this. Simply put, the companionship, the support, and even the nagging that men get from their wives in marriage translate into better physical health. Trying to sell you on the point that women nagging is a benefit to you as a man. Women nagging you is a benefit to you. Yeah. Okay. Married appear to manage illness better, monitor each other's health, and adopt healthier lifestyles than do otherwise similar singles. So again, look, they're comparing married couples to singles, but what about cohabitating couples? Because I would argue that a cohabitating couple that has been together a good period of time has some of the same benefits that marriage does. Monitoring each other's health, adopting healthier lifestyles, managing illness better. But when they're talking about it, and from this perspective, they compare it to just similar singles. Why not similar cohabitator? But we're going to get some data over here as well, so let's continue. We know our immune system functions better when we have support from loved ones. Also, wives tend to push doctors and nurses to give their husbands better care when they're in the hospital. Married men are more likely to be encouraged to see a doctor by their wives. And that is understandable if the man is the breadwinner in most of those situations. Yes, because the women, they're trying to get as if the women doing that. And I agree that the women are probably doing that from some standpoint of, you know, I need my guy to be taken care of. I want him to live longer. But also, it's logically understandable that these women see these men as the cash cow or the breadwinner, right? Well, what happens if he had some illness, he's diagnosed with cancer, he can't stop working, right? So they're trying to, as it's a virtuous thing that women do, but I would argue it's just a logical thing that a human person, married men experience less depression and more happiness than bachelors. The general social survey tells us that young married men aged 20 to 39 are just half as likely to report they are not happy, with only 6% of responding that they are unhappy, compared to 17% of unmarried men. At 16%, cohabitating men are more similar to singles than married men. Likewise, young married men are twice as happy. 43% of married men report they are very happy with life, compared to 20% of single men and 21% of cohabitating men. First, young married men are twice as happy. Well, of course they are. That means that they probably married a young female. Of course they're happy. That makes sense. That's not hard to believe. Now let's go here though. Married men experience less depression and more happiness than bachelors. So let's see, men aged 20 to 39 reporting they are very happy with life. 20% for single, 21% for cohabitating, and 43% for married. And yes, that is not hard to believe as well. Married men typically are going to have kids, they're going to have status. I would argue that the reason why, which is, you know, that's why they report men are unhappy when they're younger, because a lot of men are not working or not aiming towards anything. They're just aimlessly floating around. I think they call it the lost generation, right? So men just typically aren't very happy unless they have a goal, a aim to fulfill, something to achieve, something to work towards. Well, married men have all of that. They have something to work toward, they have something to achieve, they have to sustain. So I can believe they're happy with their life. They have wife, they have kids, but what's even more surprising that people that you probably would notice is that that's not 50%. Married men, there's over 50% of married men who are unhappy with their lives. That's what you should be concentrating on. That means over married men. Like, we can believe that for 80% of single men aren't happy with their lives. 79% of cohabitating men aren't happy with their lives. 80, 79. But over 50 are also not happy with their lives. So to me, that's also not a great selling point. This is, as you can see, it's full of inconsistency and holes. They like to jump between comparing married men to single men, and in certain situations, they like to compare married men to cohabitating and single men because it fits their narrative. So basically, the ending is the evidence is clear. Married men typically enjoy better physical and mental health than their single peers. So in this regard, marriage is worth the investment. So go ahead and get married, guys. So let's go ahead and think this in. So this one's kind of long. I'm not going to actually go over this one. So what I'm going to do is scroll back up to the top. I'm going to So this is some statistics this is from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is also from 2013. These are marriage and divorce patterns by gender, race, and educational attainment. So they break down marriage even more by race, gender, education. So if you're interested in looking, doing some more research on this data, and if you have points that maybe I didn't catch, definitely put them in the comment below. But I don't want to go over this. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I think this one is a good read. I do remember reading over it when preparing this episode. I had a lot of good points, but this is already going on a little longer. So again, look that up on your own time. U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Let's continue. So this one is also from the International Family Studies, and this is from 2014. And the name of the article is Why Men Resist Marriage Even Though They Benefit the Most from It. What you'll hear is probably similar reasons that the other ones gave. It's not very long, so if you want to look at that one as well, that one's also the Institute for Family Studies, Why Men Resist Marriage Even Though They Benefit the Most from It. And I'm going to go over the last one here, this from the Today Show. And this is obviously more left-leaning, so I think this one's a good article as well. I'm going to point out a few points and then we're going to just go ahead and go through. So basically, this article, it says this was written in February 19, 2016. The name of the article is Why Men Marry Some Women and Not Others. So basically, I think this guy, John Malloy, is talking to one of his co-workers, Beth. She was basically saying that men who don't want commitment are drawn to her. And we already know that that's not the case, that has more to do with her. It looks like he gave her a summary on why men marry. Beth read his research on that, told him he was a male chauvinist, said he was just trying to help. So basically, he went and does a more thorough research, and he figures out some data points or specific stats when it comes to men and marriage. I think it's important that we go over a couple of these. Is he old enough to marry? We're going to start here. The survey uncovered some interesting facts. So it was a survey he did. The first was that there was an age when a man is ready to marry, the age of commitment. The age varies from man to man, but there are patterns that are easily identified. And so when we do the breakdown of the episode, we're actually going to discuss that, the age of commitment. We're going to be talking about that most men go through this. Contrary to most women, they think that a lot of men are averse to being married, but it's not the case. They just become older and they become more experienced and they understand. Being married young is not only a benefit to women, but it's a benefit as far towards your partner as well. Your partner will view you more holistically if you're both married younger. But the older you get, that partner is going to, from the male perspective, he's going to look and be like, well, you're not a virgin. You've been having sexual encounters with males. So why haven't none of them wanted to take you seriously? So women fail to realize that this logic in that men have, because again, women are not great with logic. They don't realize that logically, from a man's perspective, that makes sense as to you probably have certain issues if you've waited this long and you've been unmarried and you're not in viable relationships. This means that guys have only wanted to engage with you sexually, but not from a relationship standpoint. So let's look at a few of these. Most men who graduate from high school start thinking of marriage as a real possibility when they are 23 or 24. Most men who graduate from college don't start considering marriage as a real possibility until age 26. So if you go to college, the man typically he starts considering marriage, and that's probably a couple years after college. When men go to graduate school, it takes them longer to get into the working world. They're not ready to get married until a few years after that. I think this one as well. 90% of men who have graduated from college are ready for the next step between the ages 26 and 33. This is when they are most likely to consider marriage, but this window of opportunity stays open only for 4 to 5 years, and then the chances a man will marry start to decline. This point here, right? 90% of men, so between 26 and 33, who have graduated from college, between 26 and 33 are ready. So that's, so when women say men don't want commitment, commitment, they're lying to you. There's some issues with them. When a woman says men don't want commitment, when a woman, talks about how men are scared to commit, I already know there's red flags there. As soon as she opens her mouth and says some stuff like that, in my head, because I know that men do want to get married, and this survey that this guy conducted also shows that as well. 90% overwhelmingly. Once men reach 33 or 34, the chance that they'll commit start to diminish, but only slightly. And until men reach 37, they remain very good prospects. So even after the age of 33, right, they're saying that 90% between the ages 26 and 33, they're in that commitment phase. They're ready to be married to the woman that they want, of course. But they say that once you reach 33 or 34, that starts to diminish, but only slightly. And in fact, until they reach 37, they are still good prospects. After they reach 38, the chances they will ever marry drop dramatically. So they're saying that once you reach 38, though, then it takes a steep decline. But even then, they still hold out hope. The chances that a man will marry for the first time diminish even more once he reaches 42 or 43. So they're saying between 38 and 43, that's about 5 or 6 years, there's still a chance that he may marry. But at this point, most men, many of them have become confirmed bachelors. And once men reach age 47 and 50 without marrying, the chance they will marry do not disappear, but they do drop dramatically. So they're still trying to give hope even then. And they're saying like when they reach 47, 50, there's a very small chance they'll get married for the first time. But there is a chance, or there is a possibility. There is a possibility, but is it probable? So if you want to look at this article too, I think that was, it's very long. I don't want to go over how long it is. So yeah, if you want to read this article, so yeah, they even have some, so like most men will not even consider marriage before they reach the age of commitment, which is about 23, 24. For 80% of high school graduates, the minimum age of commitment is 23, whereas for 80% of college graduates, it's 26. There's a lot of good data points here. So if you want to look that up again, that is from the Today Show or today.com, and it is written by John Malloy. It's called The Reason Why Men Marry Some Women and Not Others. So if you want to look that up, you can look that up as well. But we're going to go ahead and continue on to our next section. All right, we're going to go ahead and get ready to get into the video, right? I know y'all have all been watching, waiting, wondering for us to get into these video breakdowns. So thank you for being patient. Thank you for watching the video. Make sure you like and subscribe to that video if you want to see more content like this. Again, there's nobody in the YouTube space that is producing content like the effing podcast. So let's go ahead and move on to the big show. Yes. All right. So now we have actually discussed and went over our topic for this episode, which is men and marriage. We discussed some of the reasons that men give for not wanting to get married. We also detailed the main objections that men have to getting married. And to put the list nice and clean, men typically are opposed to marriage because of loss of sex, kids, money, respect, friends, and space. So if we were to put the top three, that would be loss of sex, money, and respect. There is no reason for you to try and sell men on marriage. If marriage is as beneficial as they would love for young men to believe, and it gave men all these benefits, you wouldn't have to sell men on that. They would just do it. You don't have to have somebody scream in their ear. Let's do it! They would just do it. They would just go out and get married because they would understand that there are benefits. Men are not getting married because they know that there are not. There are very little benefits today to getting married. Now, what you're going to see in today's episode, and you can also look when you're just watching movies and shows, whatever you like to watch, you're going to see that same appeal to men, young men, to get married. And like I said, the point that they're trying to get young men to get married is the proof that there's a push. And this is included in the media as well. And you have to remember, in the media, there is about 79% unfavorable view of men. So, following the numbers, men are not wanting marriage en masse. Statistics show that rates in the West are down, but yet the propaganda machine in the West still want to push this narrative showing happy, idiotic men in marriages. And you're going to see that in any popular television show you watch. If you watch Modern Family, look at Phil Dunphy. If you watch, have you ever seen Married with Children or Married with Kids? I think it's, you have Al Bundy. So in the West, currently, they portray marriage for men as a beneficial, positive thing. However, there is really only one benefit men receive from marriage, and the media tends to not highlight that benefit. What benefits does the media like to highlight that are beneficial for men to get married? What are those benefits? Those benefits tend to have to do with unfettered loyalty, unlimited sexual access, a nurturing partner, etc. Right? And as we talked about, unlimited sexual access, that's don't know about all that. The media likes to push these benefits. They like to show these benefits while simultaneously brushing over the negative side of men marrying, such as being divorced, paying child support, and even paying for kids that are not even biologically yours. Now you have to ask yourself, why would they want to push marriage on men? And it's really simple. The numbers are in. Too many single women over 30. They basically are thinking, where are all the men to marry these women? There's a surplus of women unmatched by dwindling numbers of men. And this is not sustainable at all. Another misconception the media portrays about marriage for men is unlimited sexual access. Yet, at least, as I stated earlier, about 30% of marriages are considered sexless, meaning they are not having sex on a consistent basis. So, I ask you, why would men sign up in droves for a contract whose benefits are grim and confinements are severe? And the stats show it. So men are not buying it. In this episode, we're going to be discussing men and marriage as the topic. We're going to be pointing out inconsistency with how men and women interact on this show, but we're going to be primarily focused on men and marriage. So in today's episode, you're going to see a push for men to not only want marriage, but to value it more than men currently do right now. All right. So it's once again that time.
And once again, asking for your financial support.
So again, I need you to like that video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, get all of our daily uploads, new content. We're going to be pushing a lot of new content on this channel. So again, like the videos, subscribe to the channel. There's no other YouTube channel that is doing what we're doing right now. So again, if you like this content, if you like this type of content, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. And if you got any suggestions on a movie that you'd like to see us do next, a show, make sure you put that comment below in the comment section. Also, comment on the video. Let us know how we're doing. We're going to go ahead and transition into our next section. All right. So, like I said, today we're going to be breaking down the very first episode of How I Met Your Mother. And we're basically going to be discussing men and marriage and why men don't want marriage. And some of the reasons will be illustrated in this episode. So again, you're not going to get any content like this on YouTube. Like that video, subscribe to the channel.
And here we go.
It was way back in 2005. I was 27, just starting to make it as an architect and living in New York with Marshall, my best friend from college. My life was good, and then Uncle Marshall went and screwed the whole thing up.
Will you marry me?
We immediately first see that Ted is being narrated by a different guy than he currently is. Again, we're talking about that framing device. This is older Ted recounting stories about his life to his younger kids. We actually hear Bob Saget's voice there, and he plays the voice of Ted. And rest in peace, he says that he's 27, living in New York, and an aspiring architect. Right there, an aspiring architect. We already know he's got that coin that's going to be coming. So I just wanted to point that out. Also, he's 27. Remember, according to that data set from today.com, while men marry some women and not others, right? Well, Ted would have had to go, I think, to grad school to be an architect. And so 27, that is him right out of school, right? That is what they call those commitment years for young men. So it's also not unbelievable, right, to think that Ted would want marriage. Remember, he's in those marriage commitment years. But if you notice how older Ted, Bob Saget, voice, rest in peace again, he says that, he was having the time of his life, living with his friends, Marshall and Lily, in New York City. And then Marshall had to go and ruin it all. And how did he ruin it? That's right, he got married. So even older Ted is looking back at this time thinking, hey, maybe I wouldn't have gotten married. Maybe I shouldn't have been thinking about marriage at that time. So let's go ahead and continue though.
Yes, perfect. And then you're engaged. You pop the champagne. You drink a toast. You have sex on the kitchen floor. Don't have sex on our kitchen.
Good. Thanks for helping me plan this out.
Dude, are you kidding? It's you and Lily. I've been there for all the big moments of you and Lily. Night you met, first date, other first things.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, we thought you were asleep.
It's physics, Marshall. If the bottom bunk moves, the top bunk moves too.
So, a few things there actually. As you can see, and this goes back to the commitment or the age of commitment, right? Ted is in that age where he's ready to commit. He's ready to get married. But when you hear Bob Saget talking as older Ted, he doesn't have the same mindset necessarily as younger Ted. Yeah, well, of course he doesn't, but he doesn't even necessarily view the marriage in the same way as younger Ted did. And so younger Ted is happy to help his friend out because he's like, I'm ready to get married too. He's like, I'm ready for this next step in my life. Goes back to marriage being a status or a stepping stone for a lot of men. A lot of men view marriage as a status thing, right? Well, it's just part of what a man does. He gets up, he grows up, he gets a job, he finds a girl, he gets married, he has kids. It's a status thing. And so you're going to notice that there's also an appeal to status that men also look to get married as well. Ted says that, of course, I'm here for all your first. I was there for all of the first that you've had in your lives. And one of those first that he named was the first time, I guess, Marshall had sex with Lily. As he was saying, he was there for Marshall and Lily's first everything. He's been friends with them for so long. He says, I've been there for you and Lily's first everything. The first time y'all even had sex. Which Marshall then replies, oh yeah, we thought you were asleep. And Ted then replies that it's physics. If the top mattress is moving, the bottom bunk's moving. What he's saying there is it's kind of a red flag, if you will. So Marshall's fiance, the woman he's about to marry, right? We have not even seen her yet. This is her first verbal introduction on the show, right? To where we're hearing about her. And the first thing we hear about Marshall's fiance is that she had sex with him. Ted was not only in the room, but on the bed either below or above them. You already kind of get an idea of the type of woman that they want Lily to be, which is sexually liberated, which I would argue this is also a big reason why a lot of men don't want to get married, because if a woman is willing to have sex with me while my buddy is in the same room,
God, you're getting engaged tonight.
What are you doing tonight?
What was I doing? Your Uncle Marshall was taking the biggest step of his life. And me? I'm calling up your Uncle Barney.
Hey, so you know how I've always had a thing for half Asian girls? Well, now I've got a new favorite. Lebanese girls. Lebanese girls are the new half Asians.
as I was stating earlier, and you're going to notice that more, is that men look at marriage as a status in a lot of cases. And Ted just vindicated that, right? He said to Marshall, or older Ted, reiterating, so both older and younger Ted are both asserting this, which is that here your Uncle Marshall was making the biggest step of his life, and what was I doing? Calling Uncle Barney. Basically saying that Marshall's making the biggest step of his life. There's that status that comes into marriage. The biggest step of his life is marriage. That's the ultimate status for the men, right? As we get older, get married. He diametrically opposes that to what Ted himself was going to be doing that same night, which is just hang out with Uncle Barney, which is basically hanging out with a guy to basically go and try to pick up chicks. Now, let me talk a little bit about Barney for a sec. So here we get our first introduction to Barney, and you got to remember this show is the recounting some of the days of the show's creator. You got to remember this show is the recounting of the show creators' lives that they lived when they were in New York. However, 196 of the episodes are directed by a woman. So therefore, a big majority of these episodes are going to be seen from a female lens. And so your first introduction to Barney is he's a misogynistic, sexist, xenophobic, racist. I just think that he's going to be, what you're going to see in Barney is your typical, male chauvinist, typical F-boy, playboy. And you got to remember, it's filmed or directed from a female perspective. So as the show goes on, you're going to be able to see exactly why Barney is the way that he is and the reason that they give for him being this way. Because again, this is how women see men who have a lot of sexual options, especially as they get older.
Hey, you want to do something tonight?
Okay, meet me at the bar in 15 minutes and suit up.
Hey,
Where's your suit? Just once when I say suit up, I wish you'd put on a suit.
I did that one time.
It was a blazer.
Ever since college, it's been Marshall and Lily and me. Now it's going to be Marshall and Lily and me. They'll get married, start a family. Before long, I'm that weird middle-aged bachelor their kids call Uncle Ted.
So, again, this is your second introduction to Barney, and notice they are playing right along that trope. Basically, F-boy. He's wearing a three-piece suit and tie, and you'll notice as the show goes on, that is his attire, that he basically sleeps, eats, lives, and breathes his suits. I want you to also notice exactly what Ted said when he talked about Marshall and Lily and him. So he made a statement where on its face value, it didn't make sense because they're both the same. So he said when it was in college, it was Marshall and Lily and me. After they get married, it's going to be Marshall and Lily and me. Well, essentially they're the same thing. But we understand what he means when he says that. Why? It goes back to our data points, right? What's one of the reasons that men don't want to get married? It's not as high up on the totem pole. However, it is one of the reasons. Loss of friends, losing out on quality time with your friends. And that is what Ted is alluding to when he makes that statement. But he doesn't state it that way. He states it like Marshall and Lily and me, and Marshall and Lily and me, which is essentially the same thing. Now, the last thing, he states that before long, he's going to be the middle-aged bachelor that Marshall and Lily kids call Uncle Ted. So there goes back to that Huffington Post data set, which goes and shows that there is negative connotations for a man being a single male bachelor, especially as he gets older. You don't hear that about women, like a woman that doesn't get married and she's older, you don't hear, there's not a negative connotation. There is when it comes from a mating perspective from males, but from society, there is no negative connotation for a woman being older and never marrying because she's a sexually liberated modern woman. Why does she need to get back? But let's continue.
I see what this is about. Have you forgotten what I said to you the night we met? I'm gonna teach you how to live. Barney, we met at the Euro.
All right.
Just take a gander at this goose stash that Ted has. Barney is actually probably one of the best things to happen to Ted because it got him out of this douchey shell that he's in. You'll notice that as episodes go on that Ted's not a douche, but he's a know-it-all. He's a cornball. And so you can kind of see that corniness right here with the need to wear looks like a porn stash, if I'm being quite honest with you. And Barney's going to comment on that as well, which I think is hilarious. What they're showing you about this character Barney with that, right? The normal person would be like, that's weird. He was just in a bathroom with me. You know, we're just pissing beside each other. Now he's talking, he's coming up to me to talk. But that's confidence. That's a guy that's confident in himself to not only make an introduction, but to a stranger. So they're showing why Barney is arousing to women. He has certain traits and behaviors that make him arousing to women. And this was one right here that you probably would have not noticed, but that takes a lot to even talk to a stranger, whether it be a female or a male. So if he'll come up to Ted and talk to him like this after being installed with him, he'll come up and talk to any kind of woman that he wants to talk to. I think you should notice that as well.
Lesson 1, lose the goatee. It doesn't go with your suit.
I'm not wearing a.
Lesson 2, get a suit. Suits are cool. Exhibit A. Lesson 3, don't even think about getting married till you're 30.
Right. You're right. I guess it's just your best friend gets engaged. You start thinking about that stuff.
I thought I was your best friend.
Okay, Barney gave him 3 things. The first thing, get rid of the goatee, right? It looks corny, it looks goofy. It does not suit you. Second thing he said was to get a suit. Playing back into that douchiness, you just gotta have a suit on. Like what kind of douche a woman is gonna look at? What kind of douche wears a suit all the time? Guys are like, well, a successful man typically wears a suit a lot of the times. Anyway, the third thing, even though, remember, this is from a female, because a female directed most of these episodes, it's a female perspective or viewpoint, even she is looking at Barney as a male chauvinist, sexist, all the isms that you could think of, right? But even this guy who treats women probably like they are less than him, even he says you can think about getting married once you're 30. 30, that just so happened coincides with women hitting the wall. So even they even want the chauvinist guys to hopefully change their ways and get married after a certain age. Let's continue.
Say I'm
Training day at school, and a 5-year-old boy got to second base with me. Wow, you're cooking?
Yes, I am.
Are you sure that's a good idea after last time you looked really creepy without eyebrows?
I can handle this. I think you'll find I'm full of surprises tonight.
This is Lily. This is obviously his fiance. Remember, she is the girl that had sex with him in the same room, on the same bed, with Ted in the same room. And her first physical introduction to us, she talks about a 5-year-old getting to second base, and you can see the handprint on her boot. There's a reason for this, and that is because they want you to look at this woman who they're going to also paint as, you know, the traditional modern woman. She's like a traditional woman, but she's the modern version of it. And that this woman is also sexually liberated, much like the other women, right? But they're wanting to paint this picture, and you'll see as later episodes go on, that even these traditional women, the modern traditional woman, even these women are sexually liberated. They have sexual fantasies. They are sexual beings. So they want to view her already as being a woman who is not traditional in the sense that she's traditional like the women of old when it comes to sex. She is more open when it comes to sex, as stated by her having sex with Ted in the same room as her and Marshall. And one last thing, Marshall, that's right. This goes to the goofy husband trope, and it goes also to the Huffington Post, the losing out on respect. While men don't want to get married, they'll lose out on respect. This goes into that. This ties into that because Lily says, "Are you sure you're okay with cooking or something? Whatever he's doing in the kitchen." Because last time he burnt off his eyebrows, right? There's that goofy dad, that goofy husband. So they're not even married. They're technically not even engaged yet. This is the episode. So he's already shown that he can be the goofy, and this works for the character for Jason Segel because, Jason Segel is also a goofy guy, but this just plays more into that losing out on respect reason that most men give for not getting married. I think all he was doing was cooking, and she said, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" After what happened last time with their eyebrows, implying that he can't even do a simple task that is traditionally aligned towards the woman, cooking, cleaning, maintaining the house. He can't even do things like that without making a mess of things. And this kind of sets that bar for men going into marriages as well, because this is what they're being fed. This is what they're seeing in their television sets anytime they turn on their phone.
Marshall was in his second year of law school, so he was pretty good at thinking on his feet.
Look at him! And that's all.
I'm gonna go.
I'm so happy for Marshall. I really am. I just couldn't imagine settling down right now.
Ted obviously just told a lie there. Obviously, we know that he's thinking about marriage, but also, according to the data, he's also in the age of commitment. From the Today article, from the survey, he is in the age of commitment. He's ready to get married. He's just barely out of school. But why does he say that? Because they want to push the idea that, men just aren't ready, even though we can clearly see that Ted is ready to get married, or at least from the mindset. He's not quite there yet, I guess, on the experience, but not in the way that you would think. He's not dealt with women enough. You can kind of tell he's still, and you'll see this in later episodes when you see his ex-girlfriend played by Laura Prepon from that 70s show. You're going to find out that he's really lacks the experience with women, and that is why I say he's not technically ready to be married. But the show wants to push the idea that this is how modern men are. They just say that they're not ready for marriage, but you're going to find out in this next clip, or in the next part, that he actually is. He's going to give away signs. And to touch again on the goofy husband trope. So Marshall is a second-year law student, and when she asked him what other surprises would he be giving her, right, Lily, all that he could think of was a nonsensical word, right? So again, remember that trope is going to be played on for a minute. So let's continue with the scene here.
So do you think you'll ever get married?
Well, maybe eventually. Some fall day, possibly in Central Park. Simple ceremony, we'll write our own vow. Band, no DJ. People will dance, I'm not going to worry about it. Marshall have to get engaged. Yeah. Nothing hotter than a guy planning out his own imaginary wedding, huh?
That would be true, sir. That is very true. And that is one of the truths they kind of disguise as like humor in the show. Women do not find that arousing in men. Men that are emotional. And we're going to be actually going over that in our next breakdown. Yes, that is very true. Women are not aroused by that.
Actually, I think it's cute.
But you're clearly drunk. One more for the lady! Oh, hey, look what I got.
Oh, honey, champagne.
Yeah.
No, you are too old to be scared to open a bottle of champagne.
Let's put a pin in that right there. I want to return to the Ted scene at the bar. This is what I meant when I say that Ted at times he displays these other characteristics. Like that was pretty witty for him to say when she said, "Well, I think it's cute." When he talked about nothing hotter than a man planning his own wedding. When she said, "Well, I think it's cute," and he said, "You clearly must be drunk and then he yells for another drink from the waiter. That's actually pretty witty. So I'm going to do an episode on this another time on humor, but I don't want to get lost in that. Women love men that are witty, and that is different from being funny. Now, let's get back to the Marshall. Again, the goofy husband trope. He can't even open a bottle of wine. Never mind that he's a man and he's technically stronger than his female counterpart, typically. And I think Jason Segel's like 6'5", 6'4", so big guy. This is how goofy. Now it's supposed to be a comedy show, but this is the extent that they want you to believe that guys are like in relationships, I guess. So let's continue.
Then open it.
Fine. Please open it.
You are unbelievable, Marshall.
There are two big questions a man has to ask in life. One you plan out for months. The other just slips out when you're half drunk at some bar.
Will you marry me?
You want to go out sometime?
You idiot!
I'm sorry. Carl's my boyfriend.
They had the two scenes split there, and there's a reason for that. Now, older Ted, Bob Saget, rest in peace, he says that there are two questions that a man must ask a woman in his life, and one you plan for months, and one just kind of slips out, implying that the proposing takes months to plan, whereas like asking a woman out, that's just off a whim. I will propose this. I would say that both is true. So a marriage, you could just also propose on a whim. Like you fall in love, you meet this girl, you're together for a few months, and then one day you just pop and this has happened. And the inverse is also true, which is, guys wait in the friend zones for months, years even, before asking a girl out. So there's a reason they show those two split scenes and they use that verbiage, but you could definitely spend a long time waiting to ask a girl out as a guy. And as far as marriage, men pop the question every day. Well, maybe not every day in the United States, but that's neither here nor there. Let's continue. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Notice when Marshall asks Lily to marry her, what is her response? Of course, you idiot. Let's continue.
What's up, Carl?
That guy was moving on a suit.
Plus, Marshall's found the love of his life. Even if I was ready, which I'm not, but if I was, it's like, okay, I'm ready. Where is she?
And there she was.
So I'm going to lay a little groundwork. So this is Robin that's coming in. This is the other female character. Now, what you're going to see from Robin, she's going to be an amalgamation of different female character types. And one of the criticisms of the show, they talked about Robin's development, and that is because, this is my theory, my own personal theory, is that they wanted to they tried to make Robin every other type of, since Lily is the traditional housewife, even though she's a modern version, they want to, but all the other women, they try to squeeze into Robin. You're going to see Robin go through a lot of different phases, or like in the article, they talked about her going through different character developments, but I believe that it's just different archetypes. Inside the one character, Robin, they're trying to push so many. We're going to continue. Let's go ahead and set this up.
It was like something from an old movie, where the sailor sees the girl across the crowded dance floor, turns to his buddy, and says, "See that girl? I'm gonna marry her someday."
Hey, Barney, see that girl?
Oh, yeah, you just know she likes it dirty.
Ooh, okay, there's a few things there. Remember, I just told you from the previous scene that a man can maybe even date a girl a few months and be ready to pop the question, or a man could be ready to pop the question off the gate, like Ted is right now, which is why I say that he lacks the experience with women to actually be ready to get married. A guy can be ready to pop the question, barely knowing a woman, and a guy can also know a woman and be waiting in the friend zone or close by for months, years even, before asking them out. Now, these two here, I got one credit of art history.
Amazing.
Yeah. So what you'll notice here is that that these two are split. This is the center of the screen, and you have on one side Ted and on Barney. Now I'm not gonna talk about how Ted is on the left and Barney is on the right. So we're not even going to get into that. What I want you to notice is that what Ted says is, in his mind, he said that, you know, back in, I guess, the old times, a guy turns to the sailor and says, hey, you see that girl? I'm going to marry her. So on Ted, standing straight up, he is saying, hey, I'm going to marry her. That's what he was thinking in his head. But when he actually turns to Barney and says, hey, Barney, you see that girl? Barney gives obviously a completely based and different answer, and which I'm not going to really repeat, but it has something to do with her being washed up or getting washed up or getting clean. Can't remember. Obviously, he is not standing straight up. He's leaning. He's crooked, you might say. And that is what they're trying to display in this scene, is that these two are obviously opposed, or they have different views. They're different types of guys, essentially, i.e. the good guy, i.e. the bad guy or the bad boy. But let's continue.
Go say hi. Can't just go say hi. I need a plan. I'm gonna wait until she goes to the bathroom and I'll strategically place myself by the jukebox.
Hi, have you met Ted?
Let me guess. Ted.
So a few things there. So you notice that, like I said, you see that these two are opposites, essentially. And Barney says, go up and say hi. That's straight, that clear. Which, fellas, if you're listening, that is what you should do. You should never be afraid to go up to a female and just start talking to them. You'll see, after talking to enough people, you'll see that most people are awkward. They say, you know, they're not as socially calibrated as they may believe themselves to be. If you go up and talk to girls, the more and more you do, you'll start to realize it's not that big of a deal like Ted is making it to be. It's going through this whole strategy of how he's going to get the girl's attention or meet her. You'll see this game that Barney, well, it's one of his many games, right? Which is, have you met? You tap somebody and he says, have you met, you know, whoever? And that is how you introduce yourself. It's actually pretty clever. And you can obviously tell that a woman came up with this, because I would be hard pressed to believe that a guy that talks to women, that would be nice if somebody was just like, hey, have you met? And it's like, to me, a guy would not come up with that, but that's not the here nor there. Let's continue.
Just got dumped by her boyfriend, so tonight, nice.
You know, if it'll make your friend feel better, you could throw a drink in my face. I don't mind.
She would love that. It does look fun in the movies.
Hey, you want to have dinner with me Saturday night?
Oh, I can't. I'm going to Orlando for a week on Friday. Some guy's attempting to make the world's biggest pancake. Guess who's covering it?
So, obviously, if you didn't catch on, Robin is there with her group of friends. The one blonde-haired girl, she got dumped by her boyfriend. Obviously, that is a big red flag. What you're going to see in the next few clips, or the next few scenes, seems that she probably is a big nagger. Certain women have different critiques about them, and this one would just so happen to be a nagging woman. And so, if her boyfriend broke up with that means she definitely nags the shit out of him. Now, Ted asked her out. She says that she has to go cover something for her job. That is a way out, and you're going to see, because they want to push this modern woman on Robin as well. You know, she's career oriented. You'll learn that she's a news reporter, and she's looking to be on the big time. Just remember, if a woman is truly into you, if she's really into you, she will move mountains. If you ask her out, if she wants to be with you, she will move mountains to make that date possible. So that's the first thing right there that Ted hasn't picked up on yet. And you're going to see that also in the next episode, that he's like I said, he just lacks the experience with women. But again, Robin also is the career-oriented modern woman, and you're going to see different roles that or archetypes that she starts to take on throughout the series. But for now, she's just a career-oriented modern woman.
That's going to take a week.
Yeah, he's gonna eat it too. It's another record.
Hey, what's taking so long?
I know this is a long shot.
Nagging.
How about tomorrow night?
Yeah. What the hell? Jerk. That was fun.
That was a good point to pause it on right there, because I forgot to explain that in the previous scene. Yes, that Ted was so eager to let her throw a drink on him in the previous clip that I played, or the previous scene. And this goes back to, 79%, I think was the statistic, 79% unfavorable representation of men in media. There you go, right there. A man willing and ready to degrade himself. You can see the woman in the background, especially the nagging blonde here. Look at her. She's like scheming. She looks like a witch. Like she's like, as I stew my potion. Oh, my pretty. Oh my goodness. But Ted, he again asked her out for a second time. And, she eventually relents, as you would say, because like as a woman, you're going to be like, well, he's probably going to pay for it and thing. So, but you could tell the genuine burning admiration wasn't there for him in the beginning. And she was just not aroused by him to accept that first initial offer of the date. If he really truly wanted to be with him, she'd have moved mountains to get him to take her on that first date. Because if she would have saw that this is a guy that is, even sought out by other women, she would have jumped on the opportunity, because she don't know when the next time it may come back around. And she does take him up on that offer and throws that drink in his face, so that is also a red flag. But let's continue.
Wait for it. Denied.
We're going out tomorrow night.
I thought we were playing laser tag tomorrow night.
Yeah, I was having to go play laser tag.
Notice that, and they're going to play it off as a joke, of course. I laughed when some of the first time I watched the scene. When Ted says that, because of course Barney hit him with the denied.
You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
But of course Ted got her number, and they're going to go on that date. Now, he said that I got a date with her tomorrow night. Barney then replies that, well, I thought we were going to go play laser tag. And Ted says, yeah, that was never going to happen. Now, we don't know that relationship between these two guys yet. It's the first episode, but that goes back, because you're going to see later on that Ted does actually play laser tag with Barney, but that plays into that trope, right? Not the trope. That plays into that data point that you'll lose out on friends. So you can already see that Ted is willing to hang out less, even at the prospect of getting a new girl. So not even marriage itself. So let's continue.
The next night, I took her out to this little bistro in Brooklyn.
Wow. That is one badass blue French horn.
Yeah. It looks like a Smurf penis.
Son, a piece of advice. When you go on a first date, you really don't want to say Smurf penis. Girls don't ordinarily like that. But this was no ordinary girl.
All right, so I touched on this a little bit earlier when I talked about humor. So Ted actually could have been a little bit wittier there. And see, this is what I mean. And I think it's implied because he likes this girl more than the other girl that he was hitting on at the bar, Carl's girlfriend, right? The bartender's girlfriend. So I think he was, because she was saying something about the blue French horn, and that is that plays a significant role throughout the series. So if you know, you know. Now she says that, or I'm sorry, she makes a comment on it, and Ted says that yeah, it kind of looks like a Smurf's penis. Not only does it's not even really that funny. Of course, you got the laugh track right behind it. They also use this to show you that, hey, this is a girl that is funny, and you're gonna see in later scene in this next clip. And she also has a good sense of humor, and she's also gonna be like almost tomboyish. You'll see in later episodes that she actually is tomboyish, but when she was younger, but she's actually gonna come off as a little like one of the guys as well. So already you're seeing about 3 different archetypes trying to be squeezed into this woman as well, right? 3 different types of personalities, even, if you will. I don't find that funny.
Mom, Dad, I have found the future Mrs. Ted Mosby. Marshall, how have I always described my perfect woman?
Let's see. She likes dogs?
I've got 5 dogs.
She drinks scotch?
I love a scotch that's old enough to order its own scotch.
Can you quote obscure lines from Ghostbusters?
Ray, when someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
And I'm saving the best for last.
Do you want these? I hate olives.
She hates olives. Awesome.
Before we get into the whole olive theory, because it is a crucial part to this episode, notice the things that he said. The first thing that he says when he walks in the door, and this goes back to my earlier point, he tells Marshall that I have found the future Mrs. Mosby.
Made a serious mistake.
Now, like I said, he had just met her, and he's already thinking about marriage, which we know from the data or the survey from the today.com that he is in the age of commitment and ready for marriage. But he just met her. He hasn't known her not even but 1 day, and he's ready to pop the question. Now he goes over a few things that proves that she is indeed his future wife. And one of them was something about liking scotch. The other was having dogs, which we already know. Single woman with some dogs. I think she had like 5. And then the Ghostbuster line, yes, said that she can quote obscure Ghostbuster lines. She's funny and she likes guy things, scotch, right? I'm not saying scotch is just for guys, but I don't know many women that just say they drink scotch. And then quoting Ghostbuster reference like the 80s Ghostbusters, not that new woke trash, but these are things that, and you're gonna see this later. This is probably not gonna make sense now, but you're gonna see this later. They're almost making her, pushing this archetype that she, is a tomboy. She's a guy's girl or whatever. And now they're gonna explain the olive theory, and you're gonna see that this theory actually implodes on itself by the end of the episode. But let's continue.
The olive theory.
The olive theory is based on my friends Marshall and Lily. He hates olives, she loves them. In a weird way, that's what makes them such a great couple. Perfect balance.
You know, I've had a jar of olives just sitting in my fridge forever.
I can take them off your hands.
They're all yours.
Oh, man. So, that was a lot, the olive theory. So, essentially what they're saying is that Marshall hates olives and Lily loves them. And so, the cherry on top, if you will, for why he's going to marry her. Now, you gotta remember, even though Ted is in the age of commitment, right, that most guys are in, and yes, guys will pop the question, but in rare scenarios, right, they will be ready to marry a woman. But those are few and far in between. Like, you got Marshall's already engaged, and now Ted is trying to try and get married. And they want you to believe this is, what guys are pushing for, especially in today's age. This is, now this is my own personal theory. Now, to me, well, I know for a fact the show's gonna play it off like it's not, but the olives are a euphemism for sex between Robin and Ted. When they talk about olives, it's a euphemism for sex. Now, she says, I have a jar of olives at my house sitting there. Ted says, well, I can take them off your hand. And she says, they're all yours. This is a euphemism for sex, but of course the show is gonna play, you gotta alleviate the woman of any responsibility. Now, Ted is gonna go technically get said olives, or that's gonna be the pretext for him going to Robin's place. And you'll see that shortly. And to put that nail in the coffin, that olives are sex, or a euphemism for sex. Look at, I'm gonna play this next scene, and you're gonna know exactly why the olives are a euphemism for sex.
It is on to the break of dawn.
It's only the break at 10:30. What happened?
I gotta get one of those blue French horns for over my fireplace. It's gotta be blue. It's gotta be French.
No green clarinet?
Nope.
Come on, no purple tuba?
It's a Smurf penis. Or no dice.
There you are. You got a jumper. Some crazy guy on the Manhattan Bridge. Come on, you're covering it.
All right, I'll be right there.
I had a really great time tonight.
So, alright, like I said, the olives were definitely a euphemism for sex. That's why Marshall responds about it's on to the break of dawn. Notice that Robin's job, her career, they want to push this, that, women have careers and they have jobs that they are trying to move up the ladder at. And this is why he's still not out on a date with her. They also make a reference to the blue penis joke, or the Smurfs penis joke, to drive the point home further that it was actually a funny joke, but again, it all falls flat here as well. And like I said, this episode definitely pushed the idea that men view marriage as a viable part or a big part of their existence. But we're going to continue this last scene.
So? Did you kiss her? No, the moment wasn't right. Look, this woman could actually be my future wife. I want our first kiss to be amazing.
Oh, Ted, that is so sweet. So you chickened out like a little bitch.
What? I did not chicken out. You know what? I don't need to take first kiss advice from some pirate who hasn't been single since the first week of college.
And anyone who's single would tell you the same thing, even the dumbest single person alive. And if you don't believe me, call him.
That scene there, that was a truth that is being told even by the woman. In fact, it's driven home by the woman. Sometimes you just gotta take the dive. Sometimes you don't think about it, right? And this is where there's this gray area now, because they talk about consent, but here's the thing. It's only unwanted if the woman doesn't like you. If the woman likes you, most things are wanted up to a point. Like, you just can't be like Donald Trump and just, grab him by the P word. Sorry for the president, but we can't do that. Now, Ted, he could have kissed her, and that's what they're pushing on, that he should have kissed her. And Lily even calls him a little bitch for not kissing her. Chickened out like a little bitch. This is what I mean when I say that Ted is what women want. You can tell his character was developed, from a woman's perspective. This is what women want, because I guarantee you that the creators of the show, who was loosely based on, they didn't behave necessarily like this. But Ted, he thinks that I need to ask her before kissing her. There's got to be the signal. And this is in 2005. This is before all this Me Too and all that talks about consent and what is consent. And he's like, the timer wasn't right. She didn't give me the signal. This is what a woman would have came up with. He is the idea that women have of a guy, that somebody that's willing and waiting to be married. And here you go again, the opposites, Barney and Ted. Barney is not. Barney is the opposite of them. And so Lily says that even the dumbest single person, then coming to Barney for his advice, and Lily calls him the dumbest single person because again, they're trying to paint Barney as that sexist, chauvinistic, male pig that's racist, sexist, whatever ism you can think of. So they look at any time you're gonna see they look at any time they put Barney down, and Ted, as you'll see, obviously is no better than Barney, you know, and that's why I don't like a good guy, bad boy necessarily tropes. I just think there are guys that have different incentives than other guys. Let's continue on.
Chickened out. What do you think?
I can't believe you're still not wearing a suit.
She didn't even give me the signal.
What, is she gonna bat her eyes at you in Morse code? Ted? Kiss me. No, you just kiss her.
Not if you don't get the signal.
Did Marshall give me the signal?
No, I didn't. I swear.
You know, every time I get a chance, I go back to this. There he goes. There's this goofy husband trope. Like, are we to believe that Marshall is that stupid? And this is sometimes the part I didn't like about his character, because he's supposed to be a second-year law student. That doesn't mean he's necessarily smart, but he has levels of intelligence. Are we to believe that this guy actually believes that Lily, his fiance, thinks that he allowed, or that he gave Barney a signal to kiss him? He gave him consent to kiss him. No, we do not. That's ridiculous. I hate that about his character sometimes. Now, what Barney was saying to Ted, yes, women are not going to give you some magical signal that you're thinking. You got to be able to understand the woman that you're dealing with, and you got to be able to take certain cues. And yes, even signals, little things like if she's willing to touch you, touch your hand. Touching you implies intimacy. So it's like little things like that. The more you deal with women, the more you're going to talk to them. You're going to say, well, dang, that girl, I don't think she liked me. This is how she behaved. This was the mannerism she was giving off. Well, this girl here, she's acting the complete opposite of that. She is very friendly to me. She's open. Again, Barney is correct. She's not going to give you some signal.
But see, at least tonight, I get to sleep knowing Marshall and me, never gonna happen. You should have kissed her.
I should have kissed her. Well, maybe in a week when she gets back from Orlando.
A week? That's like a year in hot girl time. She'll forget all about you. Mark my words, you will never see that one again.
He looks up, she's on the television, she's giving a report. Barney just stated a big truth right there, and that is that a week is like a year in hot girl's time. And so when Barney says that a week is a year in hot girl's time, basically that's too many days that have went by. You know how many guys hit on her a day probably? And remember, it's not pre-internet, but it's pre-social media, pre-smartphones, so people aren't online nowhere near the same urgency or the same way that they are today. They just weren't. They still have flip phones. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get on to the next clip.
Giving this bizarre story happening. Reporting from Metro One News.
Yeah, I didn't jump.
I'm gonna go kiss her right now.
Dude, it's midnight. As your future lawyer, I'm gonna advise you. That's freaking crazy.
I never do anything crazy. I'm always waiting for the moment, planning the moment. Well, she's leaving tomorrow. This may be the only moment I'm gonna get.
In this clip, Robin's reporting on the story of this man. I think it was going to jump off the bridge. I think he got talked down. So Ted sees this as his chance to be spontaneous. Guys, being spontaneous is great, but in the right way. Women don't want to, they may tell you they do, but they don't want a man that feels like he can't live without her. Woman wants to be a part of a man's life, not the other way around. Let's continue.
I gotta do what that guy couldn't. I gotta take the lead. Okay, not a perfect metaphor, because for me it's fall in love and get married, and for him it's death.
Actually, that is a perfect metaphor. By the way, did I congratulate you two?
I'm doing this.
Ted stated an obvious truth. You could even see the look on his face as he made that comment, that statement, that maybe it is a perfect metaphor because they are both synonymous. Taking a leap of faith to ask a woman to get married with you is almost assuredly like jumping off a bridge, because I would assume they both have similar rates of survival. Barney, of course, Again, Barney is the truth teller. Barney, of course, then states that, yes, that is actually a perfect metaphor. Then, of course, humor, he turns to Marshall and Lily and says, oh yeah, did I congratulate you? But let's continue.
Ted's gonna get it on with a TV reporter. It's just in. Okay.
Kiss her, Ted. Kiss her good.
Kiss the crap out of that girl.
Marshall, remember this night. When you're the best man at our wedding, you give a speech, you're going to tell this story.
Like I said, Ted is in the age of commitment to get married, but the problem with that is the way that he's trying to go about it. Like I said, he lacks experience with women, so even though he's in the age of commitment, mentally he's not ready for what's going to come down the line. So again, they want to push the narrative that men actually value marriage more than they do. Because here you have a guy that's, in his age of commitment, but he's almost going out of his way to try and get married rather than to date and enjoy the single life. And it just so happens he's 27. This happens to be around the years that women start to hit the wall in which they cannot compete with their previous 10-year version of themselves. And so now they're looking for a way out of the casino. They're looking for somebody to save them. And Ted is displaying these characteristics of a woman. It's like he's looking for someone to save him.
Why does he get to be the best man? I'm your best friend!
As I walked up to that door, a million thoughts raced through my mind. Unfortunately, one particular thought did not.
About 5 dogs.
You're wearing a suit!
Now, as I told you, Ted lacks experience with women, so he's going and he's treating this as like a romantic endeavor, when in actuality, modern women don't want to be romantic. They don't want to be romanced. They want to be desired. They don't want to be romanced. They want to be desired. And so what Ted is doing, he's not showing her his desire. He's showing her his romantic side. These are traits that might be attractive, but they are not arousing. And arousing is what you want when you want to, of course, have sex with a woman. Because as the saying goes, good guys finish last.
Ted?
Hi! I was just,
Come on up.
So, Ted, what brings you back to Brooklyn at 1 a.m. in a suit?
I was just hoping to get those olives that you saved.
Would you like those olives with some gin and vermouth?
Are you trying to get me drunk?
For starters.
Okay, so there you see it. This is modern woman, right? This is a modern woman. Robin's a modern woman. She's sexually liberated. And they want to show you that, oh, it's because Ted's romantic. But you're going to see in later episodes that it doesn't take a romance to get into Robin's knickers. And this is one of the criticisms of Ted, is that he becomes more bitter and things about his dating life, which is odd because if a woman becomes that way, they don't make that a point of contention. The older woman gets and she stays out on the market dating, they don't say she's a bitter woman. I'm not going to give away too much, but in my opinion, Ted starts to see that the things he did to get with Robin weren't necessarily warranted. And you see here, she says, would you like a drink with those olives? So again, olives are a euphemism for sex. The show has implied as much, and you as the audience understands as much as well. But you're gonna see, one of the biggest switcheroos you've ever seen in your life. Because you're gonna find out women don't want to feel as though they're actively engaging in a sexual encounter. They want to feel as though they're passively engaging, right? They are just a participant. They're just almost like from a third person perspective, participant in the whole encounter. That's how they want to feel. Like things just happen. It just happened. So Now remember, because the stat showed us the main reasons that, and this is what men actually are comfortable giving, the reason that they don't want to get married, right? But I don't want to give away too much at the end, but there is another hidden reason why at least modern men don't want to get married. And that isn't said, it isn't spoken, it's kind of out there in the ether, but at least from a statistical standpoint, you're not going to see this in any data set. But that's all I'm going to say for right now. But the exchange between Robin and Ted just now, right? So I think she's probably in their 20s. I know Ted's 27, so she's probably around the same age. She's in her 20s. She's in her mid-20s, right? They're in the age of commitment. Now, when women are young, they don't want to be romanticized. They want to be desired, right? Now, this is, of course, not me. I want to be romanticized. That's not how most women typically prioritize that later as they get older. That's why a lot of the times you hear older women discussing or talking about, well, I want to be taken out. I want to be romanticized. I want to be taken out like on a date. It just be a surprise and he brings me flowers. Now, of course, you're going to hear a young woman say this, but again, what women say versus what they do are two different things. So what do young girls actually do? Do they even, if you are a guy and you went to come pick, they are assuming attraction. They first have to be attracted to you for them to even receive those things. So, but they want to be desired when they're younger. They want to feel as though they're the bee's knees, if you will. They want to feel as though men, when men see them, they can't think straight, they can't operate. This is how women would like their effect to be on men when they're younger. Only when they're older do they realize that not only is that impossible, but that may not have ever been possible, at least with the higher status guys. So in the scene here, Robin asks, what is Ted doing there this time of night in a suit? Of course, Ted responds, I'm here to pick up those olives. Again, olives, euphemism for sex. Now, how does Robin respond to that? She's young, remember? Does she want to be romanticized or she want to be desired? So she ups the ante. She says, would you like that? Would you like those olives with some gin and vermouth? In which Ted replies, are you trying to get me drunk? And then Robin replies, for starters. So again, going back to the desire. Now, what you're going to see, because it's, of course, a sitcom, what you're going to see is some buffoonery, some funny stuff to go down, and let's go ahead and get back into the episode.
So, Marshall, this olive theory based on you and Lily? Yeah. You hate olives. Lily loves them, you can't stand them. Yeah, hate olives. 2 weeks ago, Spanish bar on 79th Street, dish of olives. You had some. What up?
You have to swear that this does not leave this cab.
I swear.
I swear.
Alright, so I'm going to touch on my favorite trope, but first let me attack the olive theory. As I stated previously, the olive theory is what Ted is basing on the whole linchpin with Robin, that she's supposed to be the one based on all these other prerequisites, like her humor, I guess they're implying, her ability to be, like almost like one of the guys, like a guy's girl, and the fact that she hates Olive and Ted likes them. Ted loves them. Barney, again, the truth teller, is stating to Marshall is that, I know you like olives. I've seen you eat them. So what's up with the theory? And so this is where Marshall proceeds to tell Barney exactly what the deal is. And this again goes to the goofy, the stupid, idiotic husband trope, is that he's saying to Barney, but you gotta promise you can't tell anybody else. And Barney says, I promise. And then Ranjit, of course, says, I promise as well, because he is sitting in the car, which is thereby illuminating the fact that Marshall is indeed kind of idiotic. But Let's continue. I've kind of beat that home on this episode.
On our first date, I ordered a Greek salad. Lily asked if she could have my olives. I said, sure. I hate olives.
But you like olives.
Well, I was 18, okay? I was a virgin. Been waiting my whole life for a pretty girl to want my olives.
Marshall, I'm gonna give you an early wedding present. Don't get married.
Marshall has both sides. He has the two sides almost to what women want. He's very tall. He's very capable of violence if need be. You know, he's a man, right? But he also has this beta side. What you find out is Lily is the only girl that Marshall's ever been with since he's been 18. And this is also an aberration. This is what women want guys to, you know, kind of be like as well. Marshall, the way Marshall treats Lily and views her, they want guys to be like that. But here's the thing. Marshall's been with her since they've been 18, right? Something that doesn't happen that often. And you can imagine that Lily wasn't a virgin, but Marshall was. And so Marshall has been with Lily since then, and so that is different. That's why I call them like the modern traditional relationship, and Lily is the modern traditional housewife, because they've met and they've been together since they've been teenagers, essentially. And they're now getting married. And what does Barney tell them? Don't get married. Again, Barney is the truth teller. And you gotta remember what Marshall said. I was 18, I was a virgin. I was waiting my whole life for a girl to want my olives. So again, he lied and said I don't like olives because he wanted her to always want his olives. So let's continue.
I think I like your olive theory.
I think I like your new French horn.
I think I like your nose.
I think I'm in love with you.
What? What?
What?
Come on, man. You said your stomach's been hurting, right? You know what that is.
So, big mistake, guys. And this is going to play into our next episode and the thesis for the next episode. Women do not want, telling her that he loves her makes her feel like a more willing participant in this act that they're going to have, this sexual act. And so, when he says, I love you, that is almost willing her to say it back or to equally be invested like he is. That is why you have the procession. His children, his friends saying, what? And then even Robin saying, what? Because again, women, they don't want to be romanced. They want to be aroused when they are single and they're trying to meet guys and be with guys and find a guy. They want to be aroused. They want to feel that desire. They want to feel desired. Saying I love you doesn't make a woman feel desired. It may make her feel maybe loved, but not desired. And that is a distinction worth noting. And there's the euphemism for sex. Barney knows he's basically, Lily's the only girl he's ever been with. So Barney knows as a man, he needs more experience. He needs more sex. Now, let's go back to Ted. Again, what did I say earlier? Women, when they're young, they don't want to be romanticized. They want to be desired. They want to be like an observer of a sexual experience. They don't want to feel like a willing participant sometimes, necessarily. Like, they want to feel like it's happening to them rather than them being a actual participant in it that, you know what I mean, that is actually making moves as well. Because she's giving him the sign, she's escalating it to have that experience, and she's just expecting him to make all the moves. This is what women say, this is what they mean when they say, I just want a guy to be able to do this and to do all the things and to make the first move, to plan the date, to make the first move towards a kiss, to make the first move they want to feel like a observer rather than a willing participant that's making actual equal moves. But you see, that's incorrect. Now, where did Ted go wrong, right? He said that he think he loved her, right? That takes her out of the frame of being desired and puts her in the frame of being romanticized. And when she's being romanticized, she's also a willing participant, because a romance needs two people. To be desired only needs one. Let me say that again. To be in a romance, right, it needs two willing participants. But to be desired, you only need one. So again, that is where Ted just screwed up. That's why you hear the cascading what's from his kids, from Lily, Marshall and all his friends, and then even from Robin herself, right? And here's that framing device that they were talking about, in which, you know, you can kind of, the storytelling can be done in a unique way, and that's pretty good, because you kind of, the weight of his mistake kind of like is magnified. It's like you can kind of understand like from three different perspectives. Like, I was messed up there.
Hunger. You're hungry for experience, hungry for something new, hungry for olives. You're too scared to do anything about it.
Yeah, I'm scared, okay? When I think of spending the rest of my life with Lily, committing, forever, no other women, doesn't scare me at all. I'm marrying that girl. Lily, I like olives.
We'll make it work.
Now see there, olives again. When him and Lily were talking, of course, they're actually talking about olives, and you can see that she didn't really care, which it was undue stress that Marshall was essentially putting on herself. Why? To please the girl.
Made a serious mistake.
Never, ever do that. They're gonna, of course, this is the show, they're gonna portray it as that's a good thing, and women will penalize you for pedestalizing them. However, of course, on the show, it was directed 196 episodes from a woman, right? So they're gonna want to portray it as a woman will actually reward you for, you know, pedestalizing her, putting her first, thinking of her. And to go back on the Barney, what did Barney say at the beginning? Yes, he said that, but Marshall was too scared to do anything about it, right? And Marshall told you the truth there. And that was that, yes, he was scared. When he thought about losing her, that scared him. And gentlemen, that's why it is dangerous to pedestalize a woman, to put her above yourself. You should always be the goal. Your objectives and your aim should always be the goal, not what your woman's doing. So Barney said a lot there. Again, Barney is the truth teller. He knew that before Marshall even probably told him he was a virgin. He probably knew that Marshall had very few, if he's been together with Lily that long. He says you're hungry, that pit in your stomach is hunger for experience, for all these things, for, you know, olives, which is a euphemism for, again, sex. Basically, Marshall just told you that the only reason he says he doesn't like olives is because Lily likes him. Or not because Lily likes them, but because Lily wanted his olives, and so he just played it off as if, you know, she didn't like it, or he didn't like olives. But in reality, he does, and this goes, then ties back to the euphemism for sex, because Barney then tells Marshall that, here's some advice for you, don't get married. And that, of course, is Barney being the truth teller, telling him not to get married, because Marshall just basically told us there that he was a virgin. Lily's really the first girl he's been with. But as you'll see in the episode, or in the series, it's implied, and I can't remember the specific episodes off the top of my head, but it's implied that Lily was not a virgin when they met. Yeah, that's right, because she had, okay, yeah, so again, and then there's gonna be an episode in which they actually try to backtrack on this, and, you know, I'd like to get into that later on, but, so Marshall's essentially a virgin, and then they're gonna push it to where, you know, in the series that Lily matches that in a way. I'm not even gonna get into the particulars, but because as the stats show, marriages that work out the best is when both parties are a virgin. And I hate this like argument that women sometimes give when they talk about, well, I know young couples that have gotten married or gotten married when they were young, but the caveat is that they were not virgins. They were probably not virgins. And we know a large amount of females in the United States, by the time they're 18, have had a couple of sexual encounters. So they're gonna, of course, try to backtrack on that, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. And like I said, Barney, being the truth teller, tells them don't get married, because he already knows, and we're actually going to see an episode later on why he definitely should not get married. Make sure you like that video, subscribe to the channel. If you have any comments, put them in the comments below, and make sure you like and subscribe to that video. If you like this content, if you like this type of content, and you want to see future movies, vision shows, series, put it in the comment below. We're going to go ahead and get into the final clip, and we'll actually be discussing the women and their sexual desires. So we're going to finish this final clip up from this episode. We're going to move on and prep up our second episode clips, which we'll be building actually on from this storyline, right? And we're going to be actually talking about being emotionally available as a man. And do women like emotionally available men? Do women like men who pedestalize them? Do women like men who place them above themselves? Let's continue.
I'm done being single. I'm not good at it. Look, obviously, you can't tell a woman you just met you love her. It sucks that you can't. I'll tell you something, though. If a woman, not you, just some hypothetical woman, were to bear with me through all this, I think I'd make a damn good husband. Because that's the stuff I'd be good at. Stuff like making her laugh and being a good father and walking her 5 hypothetical dogs.
So he did tell the truth there. And that is, what did I say earlier? You cannot romanticize young women. You have to desire them because they're young, they're beautiful. And Ted told a truth there. You can't say, I love you to a woman that you just met. Of course, I don't understand why he didn't realize that beforehand. But again, this is how quickly some men are, especially in the age of commitment. For the right woman, they're just ready to jump over that broom. So he tells her, I love you. And like I said, you can't do that. More people would say you can't be a good guy. Like I said, I don't like that term. I don't like the whole good guy because that's just ambiguous, to be honest. Like, who decides who's good? And people have different definitions. Greek philosophers, they were philosophizing about good and evil since way back then, and we still haven't necessarily come up with a good answer for that. So I don't actually like that term, and so a lot of people would just say women punish you for being a good guy. I think I would agree that yes, women punish you for being too emotionally available. And see, saying I love you, that's the highest. Now let's say they actually had gotten together and Robin were to say that, it would then be okay for him to say that as well. So I don't necessarily know I wouldn't agree with the statement, women punish good guys. I think that is based on a faulty premise. So of course you can see Ted is outside now. They are no longer inside because of that mistake that he made. And he's actually trying to talk his way back into it, I'm assuming. So let's continue.
Being a good kisser.
Everyone thinks they're a good kisser.
Oh, I've got references.
Good night, Ted.
You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
That's a pretty great handshake.
And that was it?
Everybody just looking at it like, watching him shake hands with her, and he's just, like I said, he's trying to sell himself so hard to Robin, again, making it seem as though she is to be pedestalized next to him. She is on a higher pedestal than him. And so he's always trying to sell himself to her. He says he would make a good dad, a good husband, again, being too emotionally available. Cannot do that. That is too emotionally available. You haven't even kissed this woman yet, and you're talking about about being a good father and a good, basically, provider. He's trying to sell, like I said, he is in the age of commitment, according to that Today's.com survey, and he is ready to be married. And I'm going to talk about that at the end of this episode. Also, the hidden reason why modern men don't want to pursue marriage. Look at what Ted has gone through thus far, and he hasn't even gotten a kiss yet. So just keep that in mind. Let's continue.
I never see her again.
That was the signal.
That long, lingering handshake, you should have kissed her.
There's no such thing as the signal. But yeah, that was the signal. By the way, you should have kissed her.
You guys weren't there.
I am so turned on right now.
You guys, trust me. I've seen the signal. That was not the signal.
Yeah, Ted, we're not on you anymore.
I'll just start with this because I can't resist this. Playing right and finishing up that goofy husband trope. Marshall pops the bottle of champagne without anybody's help, and it's like, look, clap and seal, That's what you have in store for you, gentlemen. Besides all the other risks that they gave you for marriage, I think lack of respect is going to be pretty high up there as well. Now, they all said that Ted should have kissed her, and that's debatable because I would say, yeah, I would have definitely. We're all leaned in. But again, now Robin got that handshake going with Ted, and see, it goes back into being desired. She's sitting there touching him. These are typically good signs. They sat there and lingered. So even though he talked all that nonsense, it seemed that Robin was still into the idea of hooking up with Ted. And when they were shaking hands and they were looking at each other for a while, if he had kissed her, then escalate back up to sex. And that's why I say she's young. She doesn't want to be romanticized. She doesn't want to necessarily, she wants to be desired. And that's desire. Having a guy just meet you on the first night and just can't keep his hands off of you type of thing, rather than a guy that meets you and walks around and covers puddles with his rain jacket and all this stuff. No. Women might say that's what they want, but they want the previous, not the latter. Now, his friends are all saying, they're all replying to that. Even the bartender and Ranjit says he should have kissed her. As I said, he has very little experience with women, and you're going to see that later in the series, but he just doesn't understand these cues that women are putting out, and that's why he missed the cue to give her a kiss. Like I said, the physical touch is there. They're shaking hands. Let's finish up this clip.
That was not the signal.
I asked her about it years later, and yeah, that was the signal. I could have kissed her. But that's the funny thing about destiny. It happens whether you plan it or not. I never thought I'd see that girl again, but it turns out I was just too close to the puzzle to see the picture that was forming. Because that, kids, is the true story of how I met your Aunt Robin.
So before we finish out, a couple seconds up on that clip, as like I said, Robin kind of confirmed it when she said that, yeah, years later, that was the signal to give her a kiss. And what happens after the kiss? Well, like I said, he's kissing her, she's just a willing participant. I'm going to finish out this, and then I'm going to wrap up on my final thoughts on this episode.
It happens whether you plan it or not. I never thought I'd see that girl again, but it turns out I was just too close to the puzzle to see the picture that was forming. Because that, kids, is the true story of how I met your Aunt Robin.
Aunt Robin?
All right, so the end of the episode, of course, they basically think that it's the story about how they met their mom. But of course, it's not. It's multiple stories. That is how that episode ends. They, of course, think that he's telling them the story about how they met their mom. But of course, that is not just one story. Of course, it's a series long. So that becomes a running gag in itself. So to wrap up, again, so points, takeaways from this episode, right? From this particular one episode when we talked about men and marriage. I think it's first point out, women, when women are young, they don't want to be romanticized, they want to be desired. It is only when women become older that they care about being romanced or romanticized, because the desire they know is no longer there. And it may never have been there to the level that they thought it previously was as well. Now, the main reasons that men give according to data and the articles, for not wanting to get married, and these are the reasons that men give, remember, and that is typically loss of sex, loss of money, loss of kids, loss of space, loss of respect, and even loss of friends. Now, I would offer up another reason as well, and I think this reason is, at least in modern age, is definitely the elephant in the room, and it's also what this episode basically just showed you by the end, because I don't want to give away too much for the next episodes and current and what's going to happen in the future. But, and this goes back to what they said about Ted's character development, or how Ted becomes more bitter. I just think that Ted sees that he had to go through all of these things and just to get with Robin, and he's going to see other guys that have done far less and get much further. And this is what women don't like. They don't like you to point out that there's ranking and levels that they give to men as far as even their sexuality. So some guys get 50% of their sexuality. Some guys get 75% of their sexuality. Oh, this guy here, he can give me next to nothing, and he can get about 100% of my sexuality. And so I would, as I was talking about men in marriage and the reasons they give, I would say this is an additional reason. Men do not want to pay what is considered the ultimate price, right, for basically a woman that might take him for his money, his kids, his friends, you know what I mean, his peace of mind. He's going to marry this woman that might give him 30 to 50% of her sexuality. All right? Because remember, 1/3 of men are in sexless marriages. So I think that's what you're going to see in the future. I think that's what's going to happen, is that men are just going to be like, I'll get some milk, but I'm not going to buy the cow. Milk's pretty cheap. Cow's expensive. All right? The price of a marriage is expensive, but sex is cheap in this day and age. Access to sex is cheap. That is why things like OnlyFans and these e-model girls and the rise of all these sex-positive sex worker platforms and venues have come, because sex is cheap. And remember, men just care about quantity. We don't care about the quality of sex. And so anyway, so as I stated, the show wants you to believe that men are just ready to be married, and that is partially true according to the statistics, especially when you look at Ted, Marshall. All those guys are in their commitment age, and according to the data, when you're in your commitment age, men are very ready to be married. They see it as a status thing as well. Now, what they don't tell you though is the reasons that men, typically the ones that don't want to get married, choose not to get married. And they're basically showing you in this episode why men don't marry some but marry others. And they're trying to, play it off as, something else. There's something else to it. But you got to think, this 196 of these episodes, I think that's an overwhelming, I think the lady that directed most of these episodes of How I Met Your Mother, I think she directed 90, if I had to take a rough guess, 96 to 97% of the episodes were directed by her. And I think that's significant. I think that's very significant. I wasn't aware of this until I did some research on the show and looking it up and, planning out the first episode of our podcast. But I was kind of shocked by that. I wasn't expecting that, to be honest. But now that I have seen that, it just makes more and more sense. The more I watch episodes, the more I see. All right, looks like we're running a little longer than expected. and we're going to have to shut this down. So we're going to be breaking down episode 2 of How I Met Your Mother on our next show. And in that, we're going to be discussing women, emotionally available men, and do women value emotionally available men outside of friendships? No other show on YouTube is doing what we're doing. Feminist News Media, FM Podcast. Make sure y'all like that video. Every like is a thumbs up to our videographer, our technical supervisor, our do-it-all, Fox. I'm looking at you, my man, and we'll see you next time. I am your host, The Black Man.